Hi, everyone. We're running on schedule. We should start at about 1:30 is the planned time. So stand by, and we'll get started once we pull it up on the screens here.
I'd rather like right there.
Yeah, because you have to take a bus. Take the bus yeah. I love it. I think it's a good idea. I love it. Yeah.
Put these two together forever. Yeah, we got a little bit. All right.
If I go downstairs.
Hello, everyone. This is Gail Royster at Edison Electric Institute. We're about to reconvene, so I'm going to put you on mute until we start. Thank you. Testing. Testing. Yeah, it's probably.
Okay, folks, we're going to start. Grab your seats. Start about 1 minute. I'm going to toggle. Okay, thank you, John. All right, everyone, let's go ahead and get started. Up next is our partner from DHS, National Infrastructure Coordination Center, Greg Mcshane. Greg, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself. The slides are up and running on the webinar. Let me double check we're good to go. Yep, okay.
All right, great. Thanks, Tom, for the intro. Greg Mcshane. I'm with the National Infrastructure Coordinating Center.
Raise your hand so everybody in the room knows where you're at. There you go. That's
over
right.
here. Over here.
Just his voice.
Be on for the next hour and 15 minutes. I'm gonna sit from here.
His big brother. He's watching.
So we're extremely busy. We've had a number of folks that were actually invited as well from our watch operations. They couldn't make it since they're doing the response to the hurricane. And I know that Jay Robinson's on the invite list. He's with our National Risk Management Center. He does more of the analysis part, the risk management. But I also brought along Mike Overton from Idaho National Labs and Jeff Dodge from Idaho National Labs. They're going to cover some of the situation awareness capabilities and tools that we've since developed and rolled out starting in August of this year. Some really neat capabilities that we're developing and are actually utilizing during the hurricane. So, with that, I also wanted to just make mention, I've been coming to some of these meetings for the last 2 years, and one of the reasons why I'm still here is this. I mean, I get really excited when I see a group like this. They're problem solvers. They're addressing the issues, the challenges. We're faced with a lot of this even in our operations cell, but we don't have a lot of we have a lot of those capabilities to outreach to the private sector, et cetera, but we're stuck in a very bureaucratic type avenue. And one of those avenues to get more information is through the All Hazards Consortium, and we're pretty jazzed about the things that we're doing, some of the use cases. When I pull up some of the incident action plan, what we're doing with Florence, it mirrors everything that we're doing here. And, what we're doing with our tools for situational awareness, the use case studies are all hurricane, active shooter, fire. It's that all hazards challenge that we're faced with day in, day out. And let me tell you, on a good day at DHS, if you're breaking even, that's doing really well. This time last year, I think we were well into response to hurricanes in Puerto Rico, Houston. I think we worked probably about 60 days straight. Right now, they've taken me out of that role. I'm normally in a technical and facilities role as the branch chief for the NICC in that kind of avenue. So I'm kind of I actually have a chance to take a step back and look in and see how we're doing operations, see how I can better support it from a facilities, from a technical perspective. I also serve on MPPD's data integration task force, and what I see here we're doing with data and the ORL, operational readiness levels, we're in. We're going to pilot some of that with some of our data sets. When you start talking about quality, this issue we just talked about yesterday in this task force, and quite frankly, there is some policy in place with DHS that says yes, we have to do that, but it doesn't tell you how to do that. So here, a great opportunity to sell that back to DHS and get buy-in from that agency. So with that, I wanted to walk through a couple slides for the NICC. Just to kind of give you an understanding of kind of what we are, how we're set up, what's our mission, how do we fit in, and talk through some of that. But I don't want that to be kind of the bulk of the discussion here. It should be a really 50-50 exchange. And I also want to get into some of the things that we're doing for Florence and then take on some of our tools and capabilities. So with that, our mission's 24/7
Greg,
awareness.
Let me interject real quick. I meant to
go ahead.
This up beforehand for the private sector folks that are new. So DHS Infrastructure Coordination Center is an ops center, and that data is fed into there through an army of PSAs, Protective Security Advisors, that are feet on the ground. How many are out there?
Oh, there's a couple in every state.
Okay. And they deal with every sector. So they deal with electric, they deal with water, wastewater, food, fuel, the whole thing. And those folks are on the ground, and they have trusted relationships with many of the private sector owner-operators of critical infrastructure. So that PSA feedback comes right up through the NIC. So there's no federal, in my opinion, there's no federal agency has better knowledge of what's going on the ground than DHS, and the NIC is their ops center. And we are tying the SISE to the NIC, right? I just want to make sure you understood that. So this gives us access to information quicker, more real, in real time, potentially. So having Greg and his team here is really important because, again, it's all about leverage. So I'm sorry, Greg, I meant to do that before you started, because so they could put this in perspective with this.
Let me walk through some of these slides, and I think it'll.
You want to come up?
No, I'm good here. I got all my, my notes, and I want to talk through that. So again, 24/7 operations for situational awareness, information sharing, unity effort to ensure protection and resilience of the nation's critical infrastructure. We're that information coordinating hub, 24/7 monitoring of all the 16 different fields of critical infrastructure. It's those SSAs from food and ag to financial to chem, and some of the other slides will kind of highlight some of those as well. But we get a lot of requests, particularly from our DHS leadership, for information. They come straight to us. We're kind of the backstop for information within our organization. We are also kind of the facilitating a lot of that government private sector recovery efforts during the incidents. Again, as DHS and MPPD kind of roll into that ESF 14 lead coordination role, which we saw as a result of the last year's hurricanes, we're taking that on. And you'll see some of the new policy coming here as MPPD moving into that lead coordination role. So as far as kind of how we're organized, we have our 24/7 ops. We have our briefing teams. Briefing teams are the guys that come in at 4 in the morning. They're getting things ready for the 8:30 daily update brief. They're going through their checklists and things, data feeds, data sets, those types of things. These guys are very good at what they do. They do it day in, day out. When you start talking the data parts of this and how we can measure quality, that's a huge plus for these guys, because if we lose one of these guys, it's tough to replace them. So they have a huge amount of expertise. They brief leadership every day. Leadership comes back and says, how confident are you with that recommendation? And we got to give them kind of a thumbs up, thumbs down. And I've seen it in our crisis action team during events. I've seen it during steady state as well. So we also have avenues to the NRCC down at FEMA, the National Response Coordinating Center, as well as another host of liaisons. But one of the big takeaways and big changes that we've done, we've gone from actually surging a whole crisis action team to now incorporating, as a result of some of the after actions, more of that into our 24/7 steady state operations. These are the guys that do it every day. It's not right for someone like myself to come in, play deputy incident manager. It takes me a little while to get spun up. Here, we hit the ground running that much faster with these folks, and we have a team of folks that still surge, but more for situational awareness, coordinating, helping putting the production briefs together, and some of the information sharing reporting. So on our watch, normally we have a senior watch officer, an ASWO, 2 to 3 contractors supporting. During steady state, again, 24/7 monitoring, critical infrastructure, information sharing between government and industry. And then for incident response, we surge up our crisis action team. So again, we've relocated from the Nebraska Avenue complex to being co-located now with our 24/7 ops. Again, so there's a lot more, or a lot less. It's seamless. It works a lot better, as we've seen with some of the recent hurricanes with Lane in Hawaii, as well as Florence that we're responding to now. Again, here are some of our policy parts of this. This really drives to the cybersecurity end of it with our NCIC folks, the National Cybersecurity Communications Integration Center. as well as our NRMC, National Risk Management Center. It ties that whole triangle together with, you know, the situational awareness, information sharing, to the cybersecurity, the physical, cyber, and as well as the analysis parts. How we're kind of set up here. Here you have the NICC kind of in that center right there. Over to the right, federal partners, we have DOE, DOT, those types of agencies we coordinate with, as well as their watch centers. Analysis centers, we are with the, obviously our own folks with the NRMC, the NISACs, the National Infrastructure Simulation and Analysis Center, as well as some of our National Council of ISACs, where we attend a lot of their monthly meetings, and they actually utilize our situation awareness reports that they forward on to their members as well. Through our partners, infrastructure owners and operators, another takeaway here is we've become more regionalized. We used to just have our protective security advisors out in the field in every state. Now we've actually regionalized, mirroring the FEMA regions. So we have regional directors. We are co-located with a lot of our cyber analysts, our chemical inspectors, PSAs out there. They're doing that assessment, information collection, housing that in some of our tools within the IP gateway, things of that nature. Also, our sector-specific organizations, again, that's the CAM, commercial facilities, critical manufacturing, dam sector, defense industrial base, emergency services, energy, finance, food and ag, health, IT, nuclear, trans, and water and wastewater. So that kind of gives you a broad brush of the things we're all looking at. And it's very, very, you know, when you talk national infrastructure, bring it up a notch. It's that high. As well as our other IP divisions, our sector outreach programs division, our protective security division, our chemical division as well. So we are actually still part of the DHS National Operations Center. So again, organizationally, we fall under NPPD, but we still have those ties to the National Operations Center. Again, here, our core functions, capabilities. So some of the products that we actually produce are really definitely fall into that situational awareness role. We have situational awareness emails that go out, which try to get ahead of the incident or the event. It keeps our leadership at bay. They know that, oh, NICC's got this, we're working on it. And then we actually would produce situational awareness reports. We have geospatial products that we, our NRMC folks develop, more of the analysis part of it. We actually, again, we think NICC, think triage, assessment. It's all the tipping and queuing. We are the tip of the spear. The folks that do the actual analysis, they sit next to us, but there's a whole group when they spin up for hurricanes, et cetera, called the IRAC, the Incident Response Analysis Cell, that are doing that more longer term type analysis, producing a lot more of those geospatial products that we share, as well as when we host it on HISN CI, another avenue for our information that we send out. So. We also have a capability to institute national level reporting, which is an avenue. We collect information from all the critical sectors. SOBD, in coordination with the NICC, takes all that information, and it actually goes all the way up to DHS leadership, S1, and the White House. And again, where we host a lot of our information is in HISN CI. Again, more of our incident activities. Again, obviously we have operational phases we follow as well. These mirror a lot of the things that FEMA as well follows. I'm going to take a second. We can turn it over to Mike Overton to talk a little bit about our tool that we've developed for situational awareness.
So I'm actually going to go ahead and stand up, as I feel like it may be beneficial for me to point at the screen, as there's a lot to kind of talk about for this. And I can actually see everybody. So as Greg mentioned, I'm Mike Overton. I'm the lead for the software development efforts for the system I'm going to show you in support of the NIC and their situational awareness reporting requirements. So when we set out on this endeavor, we wanted to provide a capability and a framework that allows the NICC to provide response and information out to their stakeholders and partners that is very much specific to the kind of incident that they're responding to. And for instance, when you're looking at a wildfire, it's going to have a very different kind of impact footprint than, say, an active shooter incident. Both of those may have potential impacts to critical infrastructure, but they're going to be impacting it in different ways, and there's going to be an entirely different threat boundary. Same thing with a hurricane. You got to look at the hurricane path as well as the kind of the surrounding vicinity. And again, to try to provide that high level view of once you have that threat boundary, then you know, okay, what's in that threat boundary from the various critical infrastructure sectors, as well as associated data sets that might help paint that operational picture of what's going to be potentially impacted. So that was the overall goal. The secondary step is this idea of tipping and queuing. That information is going to come from a wide variety of sources, some of which is going to be geospatially enabled, such as what the National Weather Service is going to provide, or the National Forest Service when it comes to wildfire information. And you're also going to get some unstructured or non-geospatially enabled data like your news feeds, your social media feeds. But those can still, even though they may have what we discussed previously of a low confidence score, because there's some validation that needs to occur before you can act on it fully, it can still provide you that first step to getting into that kind of domain. And so what you're seeing here is what we're calling the landing page for the application. And it allows us to see a feed of incidents that are coming in from a wide variety of these sources, including social media. So when an active shooter occurs, often the very first reporting of that is going to be in social media. And you're going to start seeing a number of Twitter posts coming through, and then the news agencies will pick up and maybe add on to that. And so we've pulled in a capability that tries to aggregate that together so that you're getting a holistic view of, hey, something's happening here. Okay, now do we need to respond to it, yes or no? And that's the same thing we're getting with wildfires that we're pulling in, tropical storms, and power outages, and a handful of other things. So once the user has identified that they want to take the next step to say, okay, now try to give me some information about that. We've done a lot of, have it turned around, of work in automation. And so even when you look at these GIS data services that are coming from the National Weather Service, they may not be necessarily in a format that is easily consumable in some of your other commercial products like the ArcGIS Enterprise or ArcGIS kinds of capabilities that were discussed previously by Carrie from Duke Energy of some of those investments. Well, what we have done is then take that into our own data pipeline using Python and automation to pre-process that in a way and push it out into the ArcGIS Enterprise environment within the NICC's cabling, the overarching IP-based capabilities, and automate some of those workflows. And so a user doesn't have to go in and kind of configure where everything's being placed. They don't have to configure the area of impact. This is all automated for the user and happens behind the scenes, but there's still a record in the back end on the ArcGIS side of this portal item that was described earlier, and that's all automated for you. So here's an example of the Florence hurricane. I know there's kind of a lot of information that's being displayed here, and it's very, very low resolution. So I'll just kind of cover it in brief from a technology perspective. But what we're doing is we're using the area of impact that we're estimating kind of as a first run to say, okay, what's in this area? We have data sets that are coming from what we're calling the IP gateway, which is, Greg mentioned all that army of PSAs that are out in the field and collecting information on specific facilities, and in partnership with owner-operators, we have all that information in a repository that is protected, and we're able to start trying to provide high-level information of answering that so what question, at least at a high level, to say what's in this area, what could be potentially impacted from all the different kinds of sectors, and display that in a quick and easy graphic, as well as providing the ability to export the data to CSV or other formats so that you can either massage the data or filter it, or to answer the specific questions that you might have. We're also here down at the bottom, we're providing summary statistics and information from a wide variety of sources, and these are all easily expandable through configuration. Now, for the purposes of this group, when we're talking about information sharing as well as some of the additional kinds of automation, this provides a framework to start helping to answer those questions once we've identified those data sets or created those bridges with potentially this group or people in this community who may have already made substantial ArcGIS investments. It's easy for us to then connect our portal to yours in a way that provides temporary access and in one direction or the other. So there's a lot of opportunities for being able to leverage this kind of platform for that information sharing purposes. And the last slide is just again another screenshot of the Florence dashboard. As now there's no longer any predictions being pushed out as far as the storm, and we're seeing some of the flooding information that's being pulled in from NOAA, as well as that observed impact concept. Again, all the products that we're developing, as well as future dashboard kinds of functionalities, when we start looking at floods or other kinds of threats, we can start creating those incident-specific dashboards so that you're getting the kinds of information that you're wanting to see in a holistic view that's very much tied to that specific incident without the user having to configure location or event boundaries or what kinds of information may be useful from, again, a high level, what's happening in this particular area in regards to this incident. So that's really what I have to say as far as the technology. So I'm going to hand this back over to Greg.
Idaho National Labs is a contractor to DHS to do IT development and so forth, right? Okay.
That's correct.
People understand the relationship. Okay, good.
Yeah. So we actually just kicked off our next set of next phase of development for this tool. So we're in a process really to look at, we're going to sit down and do some more of the planning, identify additional data feeds, use cases. We are looking into piloting this with one of our regions, Region 9. Right now, we're going to sit down with their leadership and say, hey, is this something that you use? Is this something you want? You know, the feedback I get in a lot of the interviews we're doing through the data integration task force, there's a huge gap. Our PSAs down in the field are, you know, the boots on the ground, and we're back in headquarters asking for all kinds of information. And we have information we're feeding down to them, and vice versa. It's advantageous now that we have regional directors and teams down there helping, but there's still a huge gap in data. You know, obviously it's very voluntary, unless you're in the chemical industry and it's regulated, but it's a real challenge for our guys to get that information.
When you say data, you're talking about private sector data?
You're talking data in response to an event, during an exercise, training, those types of things that you're trying to get ground truth. What's the best information? A lot of that is dynamic information that's happening right away. So a lot easier when you start talking about some of the static data that you already got from previous assessments or things that are, you know, already data tagged that are in your repository. But getting ground truth is a very much of a challenge. And there is actually further gaps in that information because, you know, I worked the utility business. We did a lot of design construction and when I worked for Petco, it's not all in your systems yet. They just built it. They're still getting the as-builts inputted, yet, you know, and then there's the days where the information is not always correct. So there's a data quality type issue as well.
Mm-hmm.
Dave.
Greg, I was just wondering, like when you, like the ground truth is always so critical. Do you have anybody that responds from a FEMA perspective that actually takes pictures and sends them back to you so you can correlate it with data that you might be looking at?
So we're down at the NRCC. Our folks in the region are at the state EOCs or the regional EOCs as well. So that's kind of our avenue into that. Occasionally, if our PSAs have good relationships with their customers or partners, they'll be invited to the table. So again, a lot of information is exchanged if there's a level of trust. And when I say that, it's we could be sitting here doing an exercise or some training, and that's when you get more and more information. So I also wanted to, Tom, if you could pull up our incident action plan for Florence. This was a snapshot from actually yesterday. They'll probably get mad if I know that I've been sharing this, but yeah, you have the clue here. So again, here's just a snapshot of what they're doing. Yeah. Again, what we're doing at the crisis action team and in our watch is incident overview, operational priorities, open requests for information. The RFIs that are coming in, and I could skip through some of these, are the same ones that you're seeing here when we start looking at the use case studies. It's power restoration, it's fuel availability, it's lodging and those types of things. It's national coordination. I'll give you kind of a good idea of what our operational rhythm looks like during the day, and then some of our product lists as well as tools and resources. So again, it's an overview, current situation. The next 24 hours, what we're looking at for our priorities, accountability of personnel, FEMA life-saving and sustaining type efforts, operational status of unmet needs, emerging impacts to critical infrastructure sectors, and then a lot of the sector-specific and cross-sector priorities, concerns, and requirements. And those are done in a lot of the, or addressed in a lot of the MBOC private sector calls, the cross-sector calls in the afternoon. I can go through and in our operational rhythm and kind of point some of those out. But again, here, RFIs, you know, here you see Undersecretary Krebs. We're looking after what our leadership wants and needs. We're doing modeling. We're working hand in hand with our risk management center, identifying what are those geospatial type requests that come in there. And this is all getting channeled through the NICC. So if there's something specific that you may need, funnel it into the NICC and ask for it. You can ask it through some of the private sector calls, or you can funnel up through any points of contacts you have within DHS if they actually make it back to the NICC. NICC at hq.dhs.gov or 202-282-9201. And again, here, I know our secretary is down in North Carolina today on her visit. So again, a lot of the dams type issues, the flooding, information that is critical to actually chasing down some of the issues that they may be having. Again, there is a regional aspect of it. These are all the folks that are in our regions, regional directors, folks that are key to our specific regions. National coordination, we have liaisons down in FEMA NRCC, FEMA MBOC, our partners over in cyber with the NCC, all the communications part of it, and then our National Risk Management Center. Again, a couple things I want to highlight. This is just a typical day in the crisis action team. We're working starting in the morning, getting our daily updates ready for our leadership calls. We have ESF2 calls to the NCC call, FEMA VTC at 12:30. We're in on those. Again, we have folks down at FEMA that are on top of this stuff as well. So we're prepping for our cross-sector calls, and then you know, the end of the day, we always have a leadership call with our incident management advisory group.
So Greg, the NIC coordinates across all federal agencies, or what agencies do you specifically tie into?
I believe it's all.
Okay.
You know, so it's again,
Energy, transportation.
think in terms of the critical sectors and whoever touches that.
It's all of them.
Yeah.
Ag.
Yeah, but that's a good
So
question.
you could provide insight into what's going on at that federal level if the use case required it. I don't know what they're using.
And there's many different avenues to do that. You know, you go down to FEMA and NRCC, you have all the emergency support functions and their representatives there. So that's an avenue there. There's also another avenue to their operation centers. You know, so there's many ways.
From a 30-second decision making. Okay, you're the belly button. The NIC is a belly button for private sector to plug in to get information if they need it.
That's correct.
Based on the use. Okay, yeah, because the problem is having a bunch of federal agencies, like a bunch of states. No one's got the time to figure out who to call. It just can't.
So anything that normally comes from the FEMA NRCC or the National Operations Center, that automatically gets logged in as an RFI.
Okay, good.
So, good. Mike.
Can't hear you, Mike. On the bridge.
What triggered your group for this? Is it Florence, or is it something else that stands you up, or is this every day?
This is not every day.
The subject matter.
No.
I would
Every
agree.
day we have the daily update briefs every day. We don't have these cross-sector calls unless we're surging for an event. We lean pretty forward, you know, for events like hurricanes that are spinning up. I think it was like a week or two ago. There's how many hurricanes on the Pacific, how many in the East, and there's all kinds of other threats upon us.
Specific that triggers you. It's a decision that's made. Hey, we better stand up the NIC.
Yes.
Because it's a good possibility they're going to be needed, or based on what's happened, because it was a surprise, we need this group stood up.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So again, the way kind of things roll out with that is we have our 24/7 operations. We have our briefing teams, and they see things going on. And once it hits a certain level, it gets spun up to NICC directors, deputy directors levels, and then the conversations start. Then it's like, okay, what are we doing? What are we recommending to our leadership? Should we have a IMAG call, which brings in our IP leadership as well to make a decision on whether to activate or surge the CAT. And again, when we surge our CAT, it doesn't have to be a full surge. It could be just a couple people.
And you cover cyber, security, natural hazard. You cover everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of all hazard. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good.
Again, some of our product lists, this is a lot of internal, our Outlook briefings. These Outlook briefings are from our analysis folks. If you haven't seen these are excellent. Excellent to give you a perspective or a picture of what may be happening down the road. At 24/4.
Everybody. So, yes.
There is, yes.
Okay, this is the fleet move thing, right? So I apologize for all the emails. We had all the craziness. We moved to new servers. This is the best product I've seen in 15 years come out of the federal government. And if you don't get it, let me know. It is I call it the cross-sector potential impacts or actual impacts report, right?
Right.
And it is phenomenal. If you've seen it, I'm talking about. So we fixed the fleet move issue. So if you're not on that, make sure you see me. But we get it, and we forward it out. Greg sends it to me early, right? So we forward that out to the fleet move list because this allows electric to monitor fuel and transportation, interdependent. It allows comms to water to manage things, and it gives you that one trusted source. Right. That's a level. That's an ORL 1 across multiple sectors. I'd say it's the best product.
So these are
really
a lot of the conversations I'd like to continue as we start looking at opportunities with the all hazards, the SISE working group, to build out, the business processes, to build out some of the IT solutions, to really kind of mesh or close the gaps or build a bigger bridge for us.
What a phone app.
We'll look at. I love the YouTube videos. that Tom does, so big fan of that.
Does everybody know what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Good, you don't need to know you're doing it. I don't need more emails. No, the reason I ask about a phone app
Yeah.
is you have dealing with a firewall issue, right? And it can get quick anywhere. And the feedback we're getting is if we can push not all, but some things to phone apps, it's just quicker. And there's secure phone apps, I guess, out now that we can leverage.
Yeah. Okay. Just some of our own. Some of these are internal. Hisn Connect is a great place to get. It's basically a SharePoint site to get a lot of the information. We are the web content managers for that, posting a lot of these documents. So if we don't have a distribution list for that, you'll be able to get them on Hisn Connect. We use this as our own internal crisis action team tracking. It's again SharePoint site. It helps in document repository sharing of information. So we have our own tool, system, IP gateway, web EOC is hosted there. Our PSAs use a tool called Seedit, special events, domestic incident tracker. Again, you'll find they use, or is it a repository for a lot of the dependency, interdependency type information they're trying to populate that they actually have access to. Again, Hisn CI is where you can get the information. Hisn Connect is a tool they actually use during a lot of the private sector MBEOC calls. It's that chat function. It's got the latest waivers and things that they're utilizing. It's kind of to support their calls in the afternoon, the 3 p.m. calls with across sectors and private sector as well. So I think that's it. I'm open to any kind of questions. Discussion. We're game. I see this as a great avenue to really solve a lot of the problems that we're up against, and we're looking at a lot of the same things. It's the power restoration, fuel availability, lodging. The list just goes on and on. So,
okay. Any questions? Let's open it up for questions for Greg. So, from the private sector, I want you to view Greg and the Nick as bandwidth. Right? They have people, staff, full-time watching things, and we've had them actually watch some things, and that cross-sector report, I think, is great. Can be enhanced. I think that's really good. Any questions regarding how we work together going forward? I mean, we're going to develop that. I think one of the actions was adding you to the SISE work group officially. So, yeah. Okay, Jeff.
Yeah, Tom. I think one thing is important to point out is what's the avenue to be able for private industry to get to communicate with the NIC? Do we go through our state public stakeholders? Do we escalate something up through some federal channel? How do we get that communication channel open?
If that's a true interest, I would suggest reaching out to the regional directors out in up in I think they're in Brooklyn, right there. Our IP regional directors. Yeah.
So I made a note, Jeff.
Good point.
Because when this first came out, I thought that was really great, and we promoted getting private sector access to Hisn CI critical infrastructure, right? And it was a nightmare. And because we needed state approval at that time for you to be sponsored in, and it's changed now. But I made a note, we need to nail that down so it's really simple, because having these folks tied into that, I think it's another place.
Again, you can always call the NICC or send us an email. Right. We'll get you what you need. Yeah. But that's another avenue to that. Through this group is another avenue. It's just...
Yeah, because it's something we want to set up in advance. You don't want to do it staring down the barrel of an impending event.
So, and let's just change, just a warning, when you go into Hisn, it's SharePoint, in a sense, SharePoint layout, okay? And you got to know what you're looking for, or it's just overwhelming amount of stuff, right?
It's John Durkin, that's regional director.
Okay, right. Now, it's good stuff, but you got to know what you're doing. It's not 30-second decision making unless you really know how to do it. But I think we can enhance that and pull information out that's relevant to what is needed. Nick, you had a comment.
Greg McPeak from FEMA National Integration Center. We're the N1C, you're the N2Cs.
Okay.
Is that like a ORL thing?
Boy, this is fun. I want to echo something you said earlier about the PSAs, the Protective Security Advisors, which there are at least 2 in every state. These folks are an unsung army that we in FEMA and in my end of planning have not utilized as much as we could, nor do I think have most. But this is a channel, or these are channels in every state for the private sector and for various aspects of state and local governments that everyone needs to know about and communicate with. And this is a way, I believe, of channeling right to the Pt2Cs. These people are absolutely fantastic. They are at this all the time. They have a wealth of information and have access to all of the information that they don't have at their fingertips. So I encourage everyone to get to know your PSAs and to use them to your most creative need. Is there a way of getting a list of the PSAs out to?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Got it. Yeah, that's a great suggestion.
Yeah. And I also want to echo, this is the closest we ever worked with FEMA to the nth degree. I mean, last year during the hurricanes, we actually deployed a number of folks to Puerto Rico. I've never seen a lot of that done to the length it was done last year. We've got folks down working with MBEOC. We got a team of folks down there. We have folks at the NRCC. Again, it's just, I've never seen it like that. And, this is great. We're going in the right direction.
Okay. So, Dave.
One question. Dave Hanlon, Dominion Energy, like that. What's your integration with the state fusion centers? Is that because for most of us from a utility perspective, we can see the storms, we can see that type of stuff. But a lot of stuff you're talking about, civil unrest, things that we also are engaged in, we typically get that information from the fusion center. Since you're watching it 24/7, we've got people in the fusion center. Can you explain how that relationship goes? Because that's where I get my advanced knowledge from it, so I don't have to sit up.
Yeah.
your website all the time.
Yeah. I'm welcome. I'm open. We do have avenues to the fusion centers through, again, our regional points you got there, PSAs, those types of folks. A lot of the law enforcement type information, suspicious activity reports, those all kind of get routed through that avenue. Again, I can add to that. Again, I'm the technical and facilities guy.
So I have an FTE that sits in the state fusion center so that I don't have to sit and watch these websites 24/7. And
Right.
they're the ones that they know what to look for me.
Right.
From a utility perspective, they also know what to look for cyber and for all the other stuff that happens
Yes.
with our utility, not just the electric.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Action. Molly.
Still have the same question. Something that the information that comes from infrastructure protection and it's very helpful. But one of the, I don't know if it's a concern or it's a thought that we have, which is there's information coming from you guys potentially about Pennsylvania, let's say, or like what you had about North Carolina, and there should be some kind of coordination that's happening, that when there's information that's going out about Pennsylvania, that Pennsylvania also knows as well. And that's not a comment in terms of nobody else should have it until we have it. That's not where I'm going. But because there's so much information from so many different places, we'd want to kind of make sure that there's a coordination, that information that's going from you guys out, that we're also getting it and making sure it's going to our folks that should be having that, so that we can make sure all the information jives as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, with our leadership teams, in hearing them, there's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't be doing and sharing that information, at least the information that we can share. Obviously, there's classified, there's PCII, there's CVI type information, that there's certain handling procedures that go with that. But yeah, if there's a way we could do that better, we're open to doing that.
Okay. So working group decision one, there was a suggestion to add Greg or somebody from the NIC to the SISE working group. Okay, so that's on. Okay, all in favor? Aye, good. All right, Greg, welcome.
All right. Thank
This second one is you and I spoke about use cases blue sky. So what I wanted to see from the working group, one was active shooter. Doesn't mean we're going to work on it. It's going to put it in a parking lot. One was active shooter. I know that was a big one that DHS was interested in, protecting workers, getting feedback. And there was another blue sky one I don't remember. Anyway, developing more blue sky use cases.
Okay.
Working group, all good?
So Mike offered up to do kind of a live demo afterwards if you want to see more of the situation awareness tool capabilities. So.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
I have a quick question, Greg. Just on the situational awareness technology, is that something that came out of S&T, or is it something that you came up with and started to do, or is there a relationship there where you take a look at new technology that you're working on? And
so the way that all came up, and it was more directed from our leadership, and again, the moons aligned with it. It not only was a requirement from our leadership, but they had the actual funding to back it. So that started the process, and it was kind of a, hey, we need to get our arms around this. How do we do this? We didn't know of any other specific tools at the time that could do that. And it was also kind of a requirements gathering, because when you start talking about the data parts of this, it's humongous. And you have to kind of just take a small bite of what can we do now? And when we started developing, it was all requirements designed around the NICC watch operations. It's designed to give the watch analyst that head start when an event might be happening or something that comes in through social media or news registry or automated feed. We're trying to design it so it's feeding the dashboard, not we have to actually populate it. So it was pretty much on our own. But again, we're going through our next level of requirements. We want to include what we're doing here, how we can share information better, if there's feeds that we can take from our dashboard and feed it to yours or vice versa, or somehow give you access to a portal. DHS right now is going through kind of I'll say a little bit more of a paradigm change. They're actually going to close down their data centers, DC1 and DC2, come FY20. So they're pushing everybody. Well, what used to be, hey, let's consolidate our data centers. Now we have to push them out to the cloud again. So that will be incorporated in some of the new system type designs. Our IP gateway come FY19 this year. If there's been no new funding for development in the IP gateway, we're looking to gather requirements for our next tool, and that is a prime opportunity to integrate what we're doing here. I like the idea of kind of a role-based access and kind of an information sharing type portal where we can feed all on-class information together, give people access to it. So
it seems like, just real quick, that the GIS committee that's going to get together, with Carrie and stuff, ought to interface, with that, because that could help you with input on some of those requirements and stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I know Chris is working on some pretty cool stuff, and we've had some conversations. We're interested in hearing more. And we want to make sure we capture all our requirements moving forward. So,
Greg, I made a list. I'm going to fill this out later, but I know Ileana wanted to get more clarity on some of the data. So maybe there's some data sets from satellite imagery. That was one. Education on the NIC. What is it? What's there? Kind of. I think that would be important to go explore active shooter use case, which was one you said, and the PSA list. I think is good. Now I've asked for that, and that's like guarded like this. But I think there's a way we can get that through the right channels. I think things have changed. The last time I asked was a year ago, Nick, and it was like, want, right? And I'm not sure why they were so protected, but I think now working with different people, I think we'll be able to get, because I think everyone here ought to know who their PSA rep is. Yeah. In my opinion, that's
and then again, I'm on the MPBD Data Integration Task Force.
Okay.
This is another avenue. We're collecting a lot of our data. We're trying to change our data culture, how we collect it, how we tag it, how we filter it, et cetera. And we're still getting our arms around it. This is probably the fourth.
Greg, if you could help that, I mean, that would be big. Again, the mission, leverage. And those people are not well known, to your point, Nick. They are absolutely wonderful people. A lot of MTS clearances. I mean, former, law enforcement, or I mean, they're just really, really good people. So I'll make a note.
Got it.
And the last one was ORL, help you develop ORL standard into the NIC environment, I think was the other one. So
Yeah.
I'll fill this out. So
We'd love to pilot some of the data and run it through that. And,
so Greg, thanks for coming.
all right, thank you guys.
Thank you and your team for
appreciate it.
Okay. Okay, we're on break until 2:45. So stretch your legs. There's refreshments over there on the far side. Those of you on the bridge, you can hang tight for a few minutes. No, she's storm baby, so she's Okay, folks, let's go ahead and get started. Yeah, I got it right here. Is that you? Okay, good. It's up at the end of the table up there, so I'll run from back here. Why don't you, are you going to talk from back here? Oh, okay, just grab it. It's up there. You can use this mic. You can use your mic, yeah, if you want. You can stand and walk around, or you can, there's a handheld, or there's a lapel. You want this? I got it. There's a handheld, 2 of them. Yeah, and there's a bunch on the tables over there, Dave. I know. Okay, so our next session is going to focus on a capability that was developed by NASA in partnership with Storm Center Communications. We heard about it from the Maryland Emergency Management Agency years ago. And they basically say, hey, you need to look at this. This technically does what you guys do with your workshops and collaborate and share information. We weren't ready for it, but at the end of the day, we learned about it. Then several years later, you can turn that off the speaker, John. Sorry. Thank you. Several years later, it was Jonas in Winter Storm 2016 hit, and Dave Jones called me and said, hey, Tom, can this help you guys? And what it got our attention. The more we dug into this product, it had a unique capability to answer one of Carlos Torres and Dave Vanderbloemen and some of the issues around information sharing. Is that how do I share information that's behind my firewall with 2 or 3 people that I know, but I don't want them taking possession of my data, right? So this had a data collaboration capability, which was truly unique. At the same time, it allowed us to collaborate like a webinar, but actually use and merge data from any source, which is very cool. We're using it now in Florence, right? So Dave's going to provide an overview of this, some of the things we were doing during Florence, so they can get a real-world application piece, okay? This situation awareness tool and collaboration tool also is interfacing right now with our operational tool, which you're going to hear about right after this. So there's 2 components to this, right? Anyway, so I wanted to introduce Dave. Dave, I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit, but let's rock. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, here we go. So I'm Dave Jones, the founder and president of Storm Center Communications. We've worked with federal agencies for the last probably 20 years on data issues, putting data to work, putting satellite imagery to work, remote sensing applications and things like that. I'm going to talk about GeoCollaborate, which is being used as a dashboard. We used it in Florence. I'll go over some of the data examples that we put up there. But the first thing is I just wanted to explain what GeoCollaborate is. It's basically a technology that enables disparate common operating pictures to share data between them. So it can be integrated into any mapping environment to make them collaborative. I'll use this one over here. at the same time, it can be stood up as a standard dashboard or real-time collaborative environment. So it's not like screen sharing. We actually can access any data layers that are available and then share them across any device and manipulate the map in real time. So if we want to zoom into a certain area, everybody's using it from a cell phone to a tablet to a PC to anything else. That map will zoom into in real time as well, and we will actually share the data into all those devices. So it's not like a screen sharing. So the really unique thing about it is that it was designed and developed under the federal government's SBIR program, Small Business Innovation Research. What does that mean? It means that a small company can have an innovative idea, and if you pass through all these gates of development with the federal government, then phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and you become phase 3, all of a sudden you get down selected to sole source status with every federal agency in the U.S. government. So now for the swim lane of data sharing, geospatial data sharing and collaboration, GeoCollaborate has sole source status with every federal agency. So that means that any agency can immediately put it to work. And so what we've done here is we've taken trusted data sources, because we're involved in the ESIP Federation with Karen Moe. Karen and I are actually co-chairs of the Disaster Lifecycle Cluster for disaster data, and to put this data to work in real time. So taking control of people's browsers and maps enable you to describe the impacts that certain data is going to have on decision making in real time. So it's not like you're staging data somewhere and saying, okay, somebody else, you come and grab it and look at it separately or whatever. No, we're all on the same map at the same time looking at that data. So essentially you have in GeoCollaborate, you have credentials to come in as a leader. Then you can join as a follower. And when you're following, the leader is controlling your map in real time and displaying data sets on that map in real time. The nice thing about that is that we can introduce users or followers to new types of data that they may not even have ever known existed, right? Like you said, you don't want to go, you're not data experts, so let subject matter experts identify data and put it into your common operating picture, and then you can take a look at it and work with it after it's over. What we're using a lot within the All Hazards Consortium and the SISE is the dashboard itself. So the dashboard is really a snapshot of what the leader is doing in their session. So the leader sets up all of these data sets, turns data sets on and off, and then when you come to a dashboard, you have all these data sets right in front of you, and you're just clicking them on and off. And you can zoom in anywhere you want to these maps. So some of the examples that I'll show you for what we were doing with Florence is, first of all, in the dashboard, we turn on and off a banner. Usually it's green when everything's good, nothing's happening. When things are developing, we turn this banner yellow. So we have operational developing situation, and that was obviously Hurricane and Tropical Storm Florence. And I got to say that I got to hand it to North Carolina. North Carolina declared a state of emergency 7 days before Florence made landfall. I don't know if that's a record or not, but it's certainly way out there ahead. They declared a state of emergency on September 7th. It made landfall at 7:35 a.m. on the 14th. And here's the storm as a tropical storm all the way out here. And here's North Carolina lit up. So when the state declares a state of emergency, the state changes color because of the work that Tom's doing with All Hazards and collecting that information together, then this state. And so you'll start to see other states light up as they start to declare. Now, it's not just turning, and I have to say also, being a meteorologist, the forecast was amazing from the National Hurricane Center with Florence. It was incredible. Not many times, if ever, do you have a hurricane at this north latitude that actually comes in and strikes the U.S. It's a very low probability and low percentage. But this is an example of the dashboard. When the storm got closer, we were putting in wind. These are a new National Hurricane Center product of when the tropical storm force winds were the earliest that they might reach the coastline and when that happens. So we're bringing that in, and also the wind radii of the hurricane itself. So we were projecting that in. These are all official National Hurricane Center products. And then when we deliver those into the dashboard, you can turn them on and off yourself. And so what we're trying to do here is take the complex ability of having so much data and information that you overwhelm a user, and then having someone determine what kind of data sets might be helpful in these decision-making environments to put them on the dashboard itself. And we're getting that feedback all the time from members of the SISE when we have our telecons and all that sort of stuff. And here's where the banner changed to red. It went to operational when the RMAGs decided to move, right? So when the Regional Mutual Assistance Group met and said, we're gonna start moving, then we changed the banner to red, meaning operational. So think about the use for this dashboard. It is to support the movement of fleet utility vehicles, nothing else, really. So when we light up these states, all these green states were pass-through states for vehicles to come through those states. The red states were states of emergency. The purple states were lit up because the Federal Motor Carrier Administration issued regional waiver for transportation. We also have the key points box that's almost like a kind of a live one-way chat where when we put information in here, it shows up immediately in the dashboard. Here's an example of clicking on Virginia. You had the state of emergency declaration, you had the transportation waiver, Federal Motor Carrier Services Administration regional transportation waiver that were available immediately. And what that enables is for the fuel truck drivers and anybody else to just get those waivers on their devices. So they don't have to carry all that paper printed out. They can pull it up right on their phone or their tablet and show what's happening there. There's also, I don't have an example in this particular PowerPoint, but we have a functionality here, which is a great interface to Columbia University's Socioeconomic Data Application Center. Bob Downs is here from there, and so you can click this button, anybody independently on the dashboard, circle any area that you want, and it will go and make a real-time data request for the population in that area and pull it back in and display it right on your dashboard. So this is what this proves is that we can now make any interface to go to any data services organization, agency, private sector company, and pull requests out for information that might be relevant to your decision making. So this could be something that could be very valuable. And so we've successfully done this with CDAC, and we're evolving the way that this data gets visualized as well. So when you clicked on state of emergency, you get the state of emergency there, and then also the executive order. This is the declaration of the state of emergency. This is the transportation waiver that comes up in PDF documents. So this is another example for the Federal Motor Carrier declaration that was made.
Yeah, comment for those that are new to this. This was what we call use case 1. This was the Fleet Work Group was formed in January 2016, and this was the use case that arrived after the big storm. I think in March there was a big storm that year. Anyway, John said we need to have a use case to support fleet movement. We did an exercise. Chris Geldart was at DC, and we came out of that. We need a way to coordinate fleet movement. We came up with a process in May, and a storm hit. Remember, an ice storm. There's a big ice storm that hit Texas, Oklahoma that fall in 2013, December, and we tested out. It was a nightmare because we didn't have this. We had a conference call. We had 100 people on it, and John Shaner couldn't get his mic to work. And I could hear him cussing at the screen. Anyway, this is a use case dashboard that has evolved over the years for use case 1 for the electric sectors, expediting fleet movement. So this has matured over time. The point is there could be dozens of these type of thing per use case. That's the beautiful part about it. So Dave's done a great job. NOAA, NASA has continued to invest and improve this. But I wanted you all to know this is all focused on a single use case, but many other things come out of it. But that's what kind of drove it. So this is kind of how we started. You know, when we focus on use cases, we get the right people in the room, we get the wrong people out of the discussion, and we focus on the results of this. So this has really been a marvelous evolution, if you will, of a tool that's being used every major storm on the East Coast that I know of since 2013. Go ahead.
You know, what we're also hoping happens with the GeoCollaborate capability is that any agencies that are looking to, at the federal level, looking to integrate more collaborative kind of capability, GeoCollaborate has already passed through 6 years of development and has gotten to that point where it can be integrated into any mapping environment as well. This is another notice that was pulled up when you clicked on one of the states as well. This is for emergency event, the FRA Administrator's Declaration there. So the other thing that we pulled up with GeoCollaborate is the wind radius. I don't know if any of you noticed, but when the hurricane got close enough, when it got within land of the weather radars, they were updating the wind radii every hour. That's never really happened before. So what does that mean? It means that you can see the width of the tropical storm force winds. And so as this storm is coming ashore, this is tropical storm force, this is storm force, and this is hurricane force winds that were going along with that. So we were making conscious decisions of what kind of data did we want to put up there as a dashboard so you could look at it and make a decision in 30 seconds what was coming, what was developing. Here's an example of just the weather radar data. The Wilmington radar got knocked out as soon as the eye wall hit it, so that's going to be repaired. And here's a couple of other things that we're working on as well. Is these little green dots are the real-time river stages, so you could watch the river rise as the rain was falling, and you can also click on each one of these dots. The purple ones are in major flood stage, and when you click on those, you also see a prediction of how long that river is going to be above flood stage. So one of the things that we're doing now is also working with the National Water Center, which is part of the National Weather Service in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, because they're working on high-resolution modeling of flood extent and flood depth in certain areas that we're going to pull in here and make and visualize, and at the same time make sure we can make best use of what visualizations are out there. So this is an example of live traffic. You know, we pulled in the traffic layers, and all these roads were flooded and closed, and so it's kind of a good correlation with where traffic is moving and where it isn't. We're also funded by NOAA's Joint Polar Satellite System program, and we're processing NOAA polar orbiting data. This is a very interesting picture. These are the lights on at night, and I'll get to that question just one sec. And then over here is the hurricane illuminated just by moonlight. So it's almost like a ghost of itself, but it's out there. But this is like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and we can see the hurricane out there. By the way, this is a lightning discharge that the satellite happened to catch with its sensor. And as it's moving towards the coast, we had the hurricane warnings, and then you could see the lights. Molly.
The data that you have in here, because most of it is the instances that you're showing are federal government, are they considered like a level 1 when we look at the ORL levels of the data that you're showing?
Yes, I'm going to show you how we display some of the ORL data in here as well. But yes, like traffic data would likely be ORL 1 because that's the best traffic data that's available. There are other data sets too, and at the end of this, I'm going to go through and ask maybe for some real-time input from the group on what you think, how we could best display ORL level data in here. Yeah, Mike.
For the traffic, the red and all that, does it tell you if it's an accident or flooding?
Well, this particular traffic layer, you could get other traffic layers too that integrate Waze into it. So you can see reports and things like that. For when Harvey hit in Houston, we were using the real-time traffic that had Waze incorporated in it, and you could see all these closed street for flooding type stuff. So any data service that's out there can be incorporated into GeoCollaborate. Some data services might require a fee. Some data services might be turned on in disasters and are free, and other data services might just be free and open. So that's the other thing about data that you want to make sure. But there might be some great value-added data sets that are out there that you want to license. And you know, if they get licensed in a disaster, we can just put them up in here for everybody to access, and that's something that could be very valuable for decision making. So the next one here, this is an example of this is a satellite picture, a visible satellite picture, but we were able to put over the wind field with the hurricane when it was way off the coast. And what we also did is this wasn't in the dashboard, but it was in GeoCollaborate that I did for another group, is the size of the wind field, and then I just projected it over top of Wilmington, North Carolina, so you could get an idea for how big those tropical storm force winds might be when it moves ashore, because the size of the storm was expanding, the wind field was expanding. These are some other products that we were testing. We didn't put into the dashboard, but we were testing, and this is a wind gust forecast, which was valid for Friday at 2 p.m. based on National Weather Service data that came in. The other thing that we want to do when we display data sets like this is we don't want to just throw them into the dashboard without some sort of explanation as to how do you understand or read that data. We fully understand that it's challenging sometimes to look at this stuff and say, what the heck is this? So it might be something where, you know, we put a 2-minute video together and make a video available for how to describe this data, but we haven't decided on a way to do that yet. This is another interesting one. This is a wave height forecast that we were bringing into GeoCollaborate, showing that there were 25 to 30 foot waves that were stacking up out in the ocean before the storm made landfall. So as it gets closer to land, you can see that the waves lower in size. However, there were some areas that were getting some pretty, and this is on top of any storm surge. These are wind-driven waves, the height of the waves as the storm surge comes in. I know North Carolina lost at least a couple of piers. This is another example that we're working on actually right now with the JPSS program. This is Route 40 in North Carolina in Pender County. And this is an example of the GOES satellite trying to detect flooding, areas of flooding. So when you think about taking assessments for what areas are flooded, well, when they first get flooded, you don't know. You can't get in there to look at anything. So satellite data might be the first instance that you get of possible flooding. This is the GOES satellite, which is 22,000 miles up, orbiting in geostationary orbit. And it looks like it picked up this area of Route 40, which is totally covered in water. And here's a picture of it. That's what Route 40 looked like. It looked like that even yesterday as well. But it was just incredible with the flooding. Now, we then took that data and combined it with some polar orbiting satellite imagery, and we added clarity. Now, you might say, well, it's not really much clarity, but it's a lot more information that's able to come in, and NOAA is processing this, and we're able to get this kind of stuff out. Now, the more we can understand it, the more we can validate that this was indeed all flooding, and I think it was. Then we can put this out as a first look product in the dashboard, so you can start to think about assessments and what you might be able to do. Thanks. Dave, does each layer have its own legend to describe what the colors and shapes are?
Yeah, some of the data sets have legends, some data sets don't, because these are just evolving right now as products. And so the next step that we're taking is being able to turn on and off legends so you can then see them, or displaying them as you turn on and off data layers. Yeah. This is just an example of some lightning data. We also have, there's lightning that's come from the GOES satellite as well. And so I think, what I did, I forgot to put a couple of other slides in there, but with Florence, we've learned a lot in setting up data sets that are automatically updated, right? So once we put the track and the wind field and all that sort of stuff inside of the dashboard, and the Hurricane Center presses enter to update their information, it gets updated in GeoCollaborate. It's looking at a service, right? Like any geospatial service that's set up,
it's then come in. Now, what does GeoCollaborate bring to the table beyond the dashboard? If you were using GeoCollaborate, you could connect with everybody in the field on your own instance and control their maps, zoom down into an area and say, we want you to go right here. We want you to go to this intersection. It has that interactivity that goes beyond screen sharing to actual data sharing into your device. So that's kind of a brief look at what we've done. We continue to do support for Florence.
Dave, would you mind doing a live session right now?
Sure.
That we did under Dave at Geo, and everybody that's got a browser, I want you to go to a URL. I want you to watch how we use this tool when we need to get 100 people on the same page at the same instant. This can be states, this can be your contractors, your employees. So we have a big problem with sending emails, right? You get a lot of emails from us, and we want to do away with that, right? So I want you to go, if you got a browser, if you can hear me on the webinar, I want you to go to this browser. It's dave.geocollaborate.com. Dave, Chrome is fine. Dave.geocollaborate.com. There's no login. There's no password. You just hit the site. And do they have to push follower, right?
Yeah.
Do it from here so they can see it on the webinar. Okay. I know it's a little slower than you're used to. Okay. So the reason I wanted to immerse you, this is kind of a little tabletop. One of the biggest challenges at least in our world, and I'm sure it is in yours, is this is the main page. Dave will be a leader. You guys log in as a follower. Okay. One of the biggest challenges we have is how do you get everyone on the same page at the same time? So if you're not using social media, you're using email. Correct? Anyone? Is that true? All right. Well, how many times you got multiple emails on the same thing? You forgot who got the latest information. It's really hard. Right? So for certain situations and use cases, this is something that Dave leads. You guys log in and follow. Okay, Dave at geocollaborate.com. So Dave's adjusting his screen, and I'm watching some of the other screen. Yeah, Dave. I'm sorry, Dave. Dave. My fault. Dave.geocollaborate.com. Okay. So, okay. The first step is, see that button in the upper corner? Click it to on. Now, what that does is that loads the data into your session. Okay? So, Mike and I have talked about how do I coordinate my logistics people that are moving from all over the place, and how do I coordinate at the same time? This works on a cell phone. It's not perfect, but it's great on an iPad. Okay? So what we're doing now is we sent an email to several people for Florence. We created this a special use case, and this one is designed for flooding, predictive flooding and road closure or opening. Okay, we did this on the fly, and I got Chris and Gail on the phone. We take a look at it. Can this be used? Now the other thing Dave's doing is he's working and merging North Carolina state data into this as well. Okay, so my point is, this is a live data collaborative session. This is live. That's right. Now you can move it, Ileana, but it'll snap back to where he is. Now watch. Okay. Now if you want to do your own thing, you just turn the GeoCollaborate button off, but that data stays in your session. Now you can't save it. Okay. But we use it many times, and like you're at the office, you could turn it off, go home, turn it back on, and it's refreshed. This is live refreshing all the time. And it can be used for almost any kind of information when you've got to get a bunch of people on the same page instantly, right? Okay, so when Dave set this up, the dark purple is the record above record flooding for this specific area in North Carolina. NOAA is scanning data in a specific area, and we sent this on to Duke, and we'd like the utilities to say, yeah, we could use this. Then we take a letter, go back to NOAA, and we say, hey, scan the whole state. Okay.
Getting our industry on board and then
how does that message?
Okay, so after we did email long enough and pissed enough people off with too many updates, guilty as charged. Okay, and we saw this, just selfish, I said, that is like 1,000 less emails I have to send, right? I was laughing. But what we saw this, Chris, as a way, okay, when you guys move your fleets, we have sometimes 8 to 25 to 30 and sometimes 50 states that have to know at the same instant, right? That what's going on now. What would be great if I knew where some of your fleets were. So I could tell state police in that state 2 hours ahead of you, can you meet them at the border? Now, we're not there yet. You know, no one's going to give up AVL data in the electric sector, but FedEx is looking at it because they have AVL data, right? So the whole point was, this allows us to collaborate with people, have them go to one place that's real time, and we can update this live as we go, and everybody's looking at the same thing without email. Again, it's use case based, but this allowed us to get, I'm sorry, Eliana, is it not working? Okay. This allowed us to get multiple entities looking at the same screen, corroborating on the data, and by the time we're done, we'll have federal data involved in this. We'll have North Carolina emergency management involved with their actual real-time flood stuff. And there's other ways we can actually use private sector to add more clarity to it. But that one area was really granular on flooding. They did 3 areas in North Carolina. Because it costs time, it takes time to do that. So we're hoping we hear back from Duke to say, yeah, this will be used. That's all I need is Duke to say, yeah, we want that. Okay, that's all I need. I don't need any money from them. I just tell them, yeah, we can use this. So what do? I go back and let NASA pay Dave to make it happen. And I tell NOAA, hey, turn it on and scan the whole state. And the next time it happens in Texas or in Florida, we've got this capability. Paid for by NOAA. See how it works? They don't know it's valuable. They're running a little pilot, and we saw that as a way to say, hey, that road is going to be flooded until the 29th at 10 a.m. because that data's out there, right?
And one of the things that we're doing, for example, on your systems, what you might notice is some red dots that I just turned on in Colorado. This is just a dummy data set, but it simulates getting the health information, getting some health information integrated into GeoCollaborate. So you can click on those red dots, right? So if somebody was updating, let's say, a CSV spreadsheet with information, then this could have just as easily been, this could be a health advisory. Well, this health advisory has been issued for this particular area because of a flu outbreak detected and is likely to be spread. So this isn't just for weather. This is for anything geospatial, and anybody that wants to set up any kind of data service or offer up CSV files or KMLs can be brought in a real-time data sharing environment. So it really does help with situational awareness across the board. And what I displayed here from a satellite perspective, this particular satellite image that shows the clouds is less than 5 minutes old. So this is coming directly from NOAA's servers and is being shared out immediately to your systems in real time.
The reason I wanted to zero in on this, it's a $5 million tool created by NASA for collaborative data. Okay, and on the surface, it looks like Esri, it looks like a nice dashboard. It is far bigger than that. Okay, we can't really explain it right. But what we've done is repurpose it in a sense where when we need to get a bunch of people on the same page at the same instant without issuing emails, logins, and passwords. I don't care if you're tracking weather. Those green dots are flooding gauges. These could be trucks. This could be equipment, RFI, any database. Okay, we could create dashboards for this and tie it into something that you can use for situation awareness for anything. Could be health, could be weather, could be fleet movement, could be anything. Yes.
This collaborative environment right now where he's the only one that can turn layers on and off is just for the demo, right?
Correct. Right. Now, let me give you an example of how Carlos wanted to use this. Okay? The power of this isn't with you all following this dashboard. The power is when Carlos bought his own license, right? And he installs it behind his firewall. Then he could have, there'd be a layer here that would say Con Ed. And if Carlos wanted to share 2 of his 5,000 pieces of information, he could tag them in his license and say, okay, share it. And I only want Ed and Tony and Ileana see it for 5 minutes, and it turns on, and now all of a sudden his layer shows up. And we collaborate on that, and he turns it off. Okay? So this allowed us the capability to keep Verizon data away from AT&T data. And we got a tool coming behind this. We'll show you how to partition it. Again, when we said this to Noah, Noah couldn't figure out, you know, they built this, and we're saying, no, it's much bigger than that. Go ahead, Mike. I know you're dying to try and.
Think about if you're trying to figure out if customers in a certain area have power, or you're trying to find out all those little singles that are out there. So what do you have? You have hundreds of people engaged, making hundreds of phone calls to try and figure that out. Safe to say, if they have cable service, they probably have power. Or if they have internet service, they probably have power because their server or whatever, you know me, that stuff is plugged in. So the beauty of this is, hey, AT&T, I'm Mike Sapone from Eversource. This is the service territory I need. Can you share that data with me for the next 5 minutes so I can take a look at it and I can get a determination as to whether or not in certain areas people have power, but AT&T doesn't want their competitors, or even cable TV doesn't want their competitors to know where they're at and who their customers are and so on and so forth, because what? They try and go after them or what, you know. Right. We tried this the hard way and it did not work. And that was getting everybody in the same room around a table saying, how about? And everybody was like, yeah, right. And then left the meeting like, these people are out of their mind. We ain't going to do it. But this is a much different setup for people to now join and share that kind of information, so other people can make decisions.
Right. So I want to make sure this is one license, multiple viewers, right? Where this sings is when you have multiple license, multiple sharing. Liana, the use case you mentioned, you want to get 5 companies working on one thing, okay? Sharing information. I don't know if it's live. You're trying to say, okay, right? This is what we're going to use for certain use cases. This is what we'll use. But if you have a license, you can publish into the secure SISE session, turn it on and off at will. And you control who's looking at it through the SISE, right? So anyway, right now Duke is looking at it. And if one of you utilities say, hey, Tom, I could use that, just raise your hand. Because all I need is for somebody to say, we can use it. Chris, I'll go back to NASA or NOAA, and we'll get this popping. We were using this to track bridges that are already flooded. And by mixing data, we could say that bridge is going to be open on the 30th of this month. At 11 a.m., it looks like, right? So that was really important.
Are you able to walk through that little demo that you...
Hey, show them the demo you did for Chris.
Well, this particular one that I have up right now is near Goldsboro, North Carolina. And what I have circled is a wastewater treatment plant that has been flooded, and it deposited 5 million gallons of partially treated wastewater into the Neuse River. And so this particular inundation model is the current level, and it'll be at this kind of level or below over the next 5 days. So they're going to have major flooding in this area for a long time. Now, if I scroll over a little bit here, you'll notice there's no...
Dave, click on the red dot and pull up the underlying map that showed you the duration.
Oh, right, okay.
Right, that's what Chris is asking about.
So this is where the gauge is.
You all can click on that on your session as well.
You can click on that red dot and say view hydrograph for this sensor, and it goes live to the hydrograph and the prediction level for this particular area. And this is something that NOAA is running these models in real time.
Let's see if I can zoom in.
So what you can see now is that the flood level, the record high is that line up there. Major flood stage is 24 feet, and you're going to remain in 24 feet until the evening of September 22nd. So this basically tells responders, don't even think about getting in there because you're not going to be able to get in there until this time. And so they know what flood stage they need to be able to get back into their group and into their organization. Now, some of the work that we're also we have a great relationship with the National Water Center with NOAA in Tuscaloosa, and they're looking at creating high-resolution modeling that covers everywhere. And so as they do that, we can use GeoCollaborate to start testing these products with you and then provide feedback to the weather service to say, no, we need it changed, or we need it this, or we need it that. So it's really engaging this user base really in providing feedback into the people who are producing these products. So that's another way of using the collaborative capability. It's not just providing a dashboard for, hey, here's a few data layers that you might want to click on, but really utilizing the collaborative decision-making environment to get people involved in getting you the products that you need.
Okay, Brian.
So
You've been patiently waiting.
we use a tool called Geotab where I track our trucks when we go off property. Can that be imported into this? So like when we came to Florida, Ileana can see our whole contingency, where we are, and
Yes.
the progress that we're
Yes.
making.
Yes. You just give us access to that service, and then you can decide how long you want to share it just by turning it on.
Here a section of our logistics and our resource acquisition group called disposition. Their job is to disposition all the crews that we have coming to help us. That could mean 5 phone calls every 4 hours. It could mean 500 phone calls every 4 hours, depending on how many group leaders you have out there. I am, quite frankly, tired of my leadership coming in and saying, I need to know where all the crews that are coming are, and I need it in 10 minutes for the next meeting. And I go, can you deal with, I spoke to them all 2 hours ago. I need it now. Where are they now? I am so sick and tired of getting that command and then scrambling to try and put that together, because I realize it's important for my leadership to know that so that they can plan. This is just a huge step in the right direction,
So-
that we can learn to leverage it.
And imagine if we created a way to notify Mike and Molly in Pennsylvania that in 4 hours they're going to hit your border. Hey, Molly, could you help? Now, Molly, if you knew that was happening and they're coming to your state or through your state, how would that be good information for you to know? Again, I'm talking about Molly, not the whole Pennsylvania. I'm talking about Molly or somebody who's vetted.
Yeah, and
Right.
that's why. Because if we know crews are coming in, first we'll notify state police, but we'd also be notifying the counties that they're traveling to or through.
Right, because we don't know that. We don't know
Right.
that you're county-based, and that's where the real leverage
Exactly.
is. The real decisions are made. People from the state can say, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
And then the county people say,
Right.
whoa, we haven't gotten that word.
Right, and that's how we get to kind of being a locally controlled state. That's how we get to the local, because we shouldn't expect every business to figure out how Pennsylvania works.
Right.
That's our job.
Right. So anyway,
Dave, a follow-up question on
Sure.
on Brian there, my buddy. He indicated that he wanted to have his information put on there. What if 5 utilities came to you? You could just put them all on top of each other.
You could put them on top of each other, but they would just be separate on-off switches to see, whose utility is what
each
service.
utility would turn it
So
on.
you would have
Or
to-
Jim,
you
they
have
would,
to have
or
five
Jim, they would all
websites.
buy your tool, and you would aggregate that for us, so it's one day to figure out.
I wasn't looking at that.
So for the folks in government,
Molly had a question.
for folks in government, okay, utilities giving up AVL data is a long shot, okay? But the idea is over time, if you have a sensitive framework, that you vet all the identities and you have a method to share it securely for a fixed period of time, and in return for sharing that, you get police escorts, right? That's the reason. You get police escorts, or you get faster. It's the long line versus the short line. That's where we want to go, okay? But I wanted to see the tool. Molly, go ahead. We've got to move to our next session here.
Yeah, can you explain, especially for folks that haven't seen it before, this GeoCollaborate is different than a typical GIS system where you're not having to take an Excel sheet and upload it into a system with data points. Can you explain how, and really how easy it is what makes this so helpful? Can you
Sure.
kind of explain how that happens?
Sure. So I can just show you if you look at the menu, I mean, right now, like if you wanted to upload a CSV file, what's critical in a CSV is you have lat lons associated with each one of those points, right? So you have lat lons. All you say is add layer to cache and choose as your type CSV. And once you choose that, then you find the file on your computer, and then you select the file, give it a name, and then it'll populate on your map and share to everybody immediately. So it's like three clicks to getting that going. Now, if somebody else set up a CSV in their Esri services, right? So So also the other point is that GeoCollaborate isn't a GIS platform that we're, looking for you to adopt. No, this is platform independent and product independent. So if you ultimately really want to integrate GeoCollaborate into your operations, we make it an on-off switch within your Esri applications, within your OpenStreetMap applications, within your Bing map, application, where people are just turning on and off the ability to collaborate, and then GeoCollaborate functionality happens within that environment. So it's not that, Esri's not too pleased, with this capability, because nobody has to nobody has to buy Esri to do something. We can make Esri collaborate with Google, right? We can make Google collaborate with Bing. That's what the federal government found profoundly valuable, and that's why we have sole source status with every federal agency. Because if they want to start sharing data, then they can start using this, and every agency has authorization to enhance it, integrate it into their mapping applications, build upon it, do research with it, all that sort of stuff. So it's very flexible, and anything that a federal agency funds us to do, we integrate into everybody's instance. So we're about to integrate a $50,000 improvement into it, and we're testing it right now.
So right now, we're waiting for Duke. I know they're in the storm season. We sent them a letter. Can you use this? We haven't heard back from them yet, but I know Mark Arnold, they're in the middle of it. We get it, right? So it may work for this one or not. What we need from the operators is say, we'd like that in the whole state of North Carolina. Then we can ask NOAA to scan the whole state of North Carolina and publish that data. Okay, so they don't know what's important. They produce this stuff all the time. It's a version higher or whatever. So the idea is we want you all to know the process. This is supported and funded by NOAA, and they can create things if you need them. So that's the takeaway I want you to get from this. So I think the agreement discussion was really good. I think the agreement is we need to spend a little more time on this as far as use cases, but I think we're using it for disaster management, but I think it has many more, right? In transportation and logistics and things like that. So Dave, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, I know I want to try to get scheduled. Do you have one more comment?
You can't share a layer and you cannot share your data unless you have an instance, right?
You need credentials to take the lead to put your data in. So like all of you were able to collaborate and follow me from my instance because there's an unlimited number of followers when you follow. But if you need a license
to publish into the session.
Publish into.
Right? Yes. Right? And the SISE will say if you're a credible, vetted user to use that license. If you're not a SISE user, Jeff, and it won't work. Right. This is we layer security on top of the information sharing stuff. Okay, so Chris Geldar is going to come up and talk about, this was the first tool we used to get people on the same page. But when 2017 came about, we needed an operational tool to track tickets, information requests. So we started looking around at what could we leverage that was already there. And we knew from experience that one of the most complex operational tools to coordinate multiple groups, public, private, to handle all different layers of security, to do blue sky day exercises. When we needed something that did it all. The only one we found was being used in the District of Columbia. Chris Geldar, who's going to speak now, was then the director. He'd been there 7 years. I don't know how, I think the last I counted, there was probably somewhere between 30 and $40 million invested in this solution by different people. But it has a black sky day capability we used during Harvey, Irma, Maria, and its real power is in the analytics, what if scenarios, creating executive dashboards, doing exercise, everything like that. So Chris, I'm going to have you come up, introduce yourself, if you will, and I'll change over the slides, okay? You got a mic?
There we go. That one works. Tom, I sent you an email with the most recent updated. Sorry.
All right.
Based on the conversation, I figured you want some screenshots of what we just did. So.
Okay, yeah. All right.
So I can tap dance while you do that.
All right.
So,
you know what? You want to stretch? You want 5 stretch?
Yeah, maybe folks will need it. I know Probably folks like Jeff, need a bio break or something.
All right, why don't we take 5? We'll take 5. We'll take 5. We'll come right back. That'll give me time to scan it up. That's funny. All right. Let's go.
Go to Chrome and try.
We're not going to go what Verizon's competition is. Same thing with Gust. I mean, like, they had a Gust.
Well, for this, I think you want to be able to put it in every solicitation.
Yeah, I mean, we have geolocation on
So if I click these, will it show me?
But honeycomb approach.
So that's the road stuff? What are you looking at? Like crash data? It'll show you the crash data.
So if this is on a state level, kind of gives us a good picture of statewide what's up. If you wanted to find out more specific.
This is the raw 501 data, the raw RCRS data. We're going to incorporate cameras. The raw camera data.
Which is actually what he's working with PennDOT on too, but he wouldn't need to if we can load
the raw data.
If you can load the instance.
So
But
I think this is showing you where the real actual time open. It's telling you it's verifying what it is. And you click on one of those red things. Oh, you have to scroll. You can't make the box bigger.
Right.
That's the problem. You have to scroll over to see what
I just like if we were to do, like the Red Cross shelters, he should be able to get those too.
Yeah, that's on.
So,
That's on our other. That's on the system.
So.
This is the road cross.
So I can click the map and get the specific, but I can't click the number and get the specific.
No, the numbers are just a display. If you scroll down, you can read everything.
Right.
Nope, you can't. And these are the KC incidents. Open incidents.
When are we looking at going to WebUC? Are we not really in a place
We are
where
now,
we
and
can
hopefully soon, we're hoping to use it for the November,
weather? Because I'd love to do.
ringing.
Luzerne County has 126,000 people without power.
There's only 590.
Tom, you ready?
Check 1, 2. Got it? Can you hear me? Hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let me everybody grab a seat. We'll take it home. So we get asked all the time. We get asked all the time about the tech solution. What's the technology? What's technology? What's technology? So let me tell you our philosophy. Groups. A lot of people don't understand this. What we've learned is when we focused on the technology, we had groups start, and they just died. There was no trust. Well, we realized we had to build trust first, and then the technology amplified it, right? So that's the difference between this environment you're in now, is that the technology is the last piece after the legal, the policy, the process, and 2 meals together. Or 2 workshops together. Now people understand. So if you like the GeoCollaborate discussion, this one I think will also excite you as well. So back to our SISE model on the screen. You can see we drive use cases through sector solving problems, and those solutions bubble up to the top. On the left, we have our GeoCollaborate session, right? And remember, all of these are based on secure, vetted people. And on the right, we came our operations platform, which you need if you're going to be in the disaster management business. You need. So this is the secret. Jeff Plackus reminded me. This is we call the honeycomb architecture. Very important. So what is that? We took this from our partners at TSCP, the Trans-Global Secure Collaboration Program in Vienna. They run the international DoD Defense Industrial Base Information Sharing Network, okay? And everybody is issued a PIVI card, $15,000 per event, penalties, and they use it when they got the Joint Strike Wing Fighter program. There were 250,000 companies on that one program, he told me. So imagine how many people there were. They all had to be vetted, and the people working on the brakes couldn't see the finances, and the ones working on the finances had to be separated from the wings, and the wing from the rocket launcher. It was a nightmare. And so they used this architecture. They created over many, many, many years. They call it the honeycomb architecture. And basically the cells are how they isolate people and information and security. Well, we took that when we worked with them. Many of you guys remember TSCP. We had our conference calls with them on the PIVI pilot. And so what we said, okay, in our world, the cells are use cases. And some are blue cells. And some are green only, so that could be food sector what's yellow, telecom, and green, or what do you call color, electric is green. So there's use cases that only people in the electric sector that are trusted and vetted will ever get access to that information. The other people won't even see it or know it's there, right? So we use the same architecture, and then we work common things in the middle. You can see those cross-sector users. There's certain things that are common. Well, what we didn't have was a technology that allowed us to operationalize this framework until we found Chris in the District of Columbia. And in his world, those are not sectors. Those are federal agencies. Those are three-letter agencies. I'll let Chris describe that. But when you are a red cell user, you don't even know the other cells exist. If you're a super user, you might see several of them. But this is all designed by policy, process, and legal agreements, which we've got in the SISE. And so what Chris is going to talk about is the technology that allows us to do this, okay, was found in his tool, and we used it during Florence, and Chris is going to walk you through that. Ultimately, where we see it going is we want to connect all these people, blue sky and black sky. You know, we light up black sky 3, 4, 5, 6 times a year, and then blue sky, we're doing planning, we're doing exercises, what-if sessions. Hey, if I lose this exit, what does that do to my NRE exercise? Hey, if I lose this fuel depot, how does that affect my comms? You know, you with me? All that interdependency work was funded by government, and they put that in this capability through the famous Exit 14 project in New Jersey, the biggest intersection in the country. And if that was blown up with a nuclear device, you can't even imagine the downstream of that. It would affect finance. I mean, anyway, long story short. But this is where we want to go long term. But you got to have trust. That's the foundation. Trust between the people, and then the technology makes sense. So, Chris, now I have you introduce yourself for the folks on the bridge and just some of your background so they kind of know the context of how you're working here. Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Chris Keller. I'm currently the president of the All Hazards Consortium, which is the organization that the SISE and the Fleet Working Group and all of that comes into. Tom and I have been working with the consortium together since 2004. I started when I was the Deputy Director of Homeland Security for the state of Maryland back then. And we've stayed together on it. I've been on the board since then. And Tom's been the Executive Director since then, so we're getting along in the tooth here. But anyway, my background going from there, I was an SES at FEMA. I owned my own company for a little bit, so I can feel your pain, brother. And then I was the emergency manager and the Homeland Security advisor for the District of Columbia for 5 years, Tom, not 7, but 5 years. So what I really want to talk to you right now is with my hat as the president of the board and talking with Tom and where are we going with SISE, the SISE Ops Center, the stuff that you guys and gals see during the disasters and then during the exercises in the blue sky operationally. So those things when Tom gets the phone call for, hey, we've got a group of trucks that are in South Carolina trying to get to Florida last year in Irma, right? How can you guys help us out? We need the waivers, right? I'll even go back to where we started with all this with the electric companies after our derecho storm here in D.C. I sat across the table from John Shaner and we had a lively discussion from a government to utility perspective on how we should be sharing information and working together and how we're definitely not doing that right now, which created the first use case for the SISE, which was the electric utility and how we do that better between government and the utility. So that's all evolved. And you all have seen a lot of the work that's been done with that, the GeoCollaborate stuff that you see here, the relationships with DHS and FEMA and the NIC and all of that are all huge progress in all of those steps. And underneath all of that has been Tom Moran, right? So the SISE Operations Center has been Tom Moran for a few years now. And so what we're doing is looking at how do we as a consortium, how do we as the kind of the overseers of this whole process work to make that a better process. So the SISENet Ops Center, we started last year as a concept use case during Irma and Maria and Harvey. And we started to apply the tools and go further with the GeoCollaborate and how do we bring that even further into it and how do we engage more with our public sector and other private sector partners. And then the board talked about it again throughout after that season coming into this season for storms and really looked at what do we need to do with this. First, we need to define what it is, this SISE Ops Center thing that Tom's been doing that you all have seen, I think, some benefit from. We want to make sure that there's timely sharing of the right information with the right people, both private and public stakeholders. So that's your ORL. That's how are we sharing information. That's some of the stuff that we talked about with the viewers that are being developed to share information, whether it be integrating the stuff with the NIC or with the GeoCollaborate. All of that fits into that timely sharing of information. The next one is interesting because you're starting to get into a space. And by the way, I totally stole this from what I used to say as an emergency manager because this is actually the role of an emergency manager right here, right? And don't let Fugate tell you he came up with this because we argued about it one day to come out. But anyway, the next one is resource assistance, right? And for the SISE, what is that? That's the information brokerage. We don't have resources. We have a lot of companies that we built trust with, a lot of private sector entities we built trust with through our process of the SISE. So within that, how can we leverage that to leverage the private to private information sharing and resource sharing to know that something's out there and who has it and what's the phone number, what's the email. And that was evident with the high water vehicles that we did just this storm with Duke. We were able to have a private to private connection. And as I talked with Jeff about this during one of the breaks, that's awesome. As a government guy, I'm telling you right now, if the private sector can figure it out with the private sector and we don't have to get involved, one less thing, right? I mean, inherently, we're lazy people in government, right? I'm kidding. That's a joke. Okay. No, but seriously, there's enough going on within government that government has to do, where if we don't have to find high water vehicles for the electric utilities to restore power, that's awesome, right? So we should be leveraging that through the SISE. How can we expand and grow that private to private resource sharing, resource integration to get things done, right? As a government guy, I'll tell you, the best thing for us to get out of a disaster is get business back to business. Because if business is doing their thing, the government doesn't have to do it. And let me tell you, we're not great at it. We're not great at feeding people. We're not great at bringing fuel to places. We're not great at, we don't provide power, right? So the best thing we can do is get people back to doing what they do, so everything the recovery goes faster. The next thing within the resource brokerage or resource information brokerage, public to private. That's the waiver discussions, right? Where are the waivers from the states, from counties, from the federal government? Where are the declarations? Because those things help people in this process of moving resources around. The convoy assist stuff that Tom did last year, as I mentioned earlier. One I left off of here is going the other way, private to public. There are some places where that information is not getting shared from the private sector to the public sector, in which we aid. And some of the products that Tom produces, that this ops center for SISE should be producing to the federal government, or so that they understand what's going on with some sectors, some instances in the private sector. Food is a great example of that. Facilitate a collaborative environment. I had a guy that actually sent me an email and said, I want to do an interview for you for a job in your organization. And I didn't have a job in my organization, so I wasn't going to really do anything. But I looked at his resume, and on his resume, he had this line: I filled a white space in a matrix organization. I said, you know what? I'm bringing that guy in. I want to see because those of us that know this whole emergency thing when things are going on is a big matrix environment. And there's a lot of white space in there. And that's really, for this collaborative environment, that's really what the SISE Ops Center is doing. It's filling in those places where it may not be touching. It's matrixed out. Somebody knows something about something, but it's not really all in one place. So filling in that white space to facilitate that collaborative environment. Focused and based on identified use cases, though. Not just peanut butter spreading it across the board. Staying focused, taking the use cases and taking them all the way down. That's what we're looking to try to do. So what is all this? This is the purpose of why we're looking at a SISENet Ops Center beyond just Tom Moran himself from the All Hazards Consortium to provide what Tom's been doing at the next level. We started with one use case. Tom and I were there day one on the first use case. We have many more now, and it's going to expand. You all in here talked about several other use cases. To do that, we need people that are working those things. We need them that are working them not just during dark skies, but during blue skies as well. So that's what we're looking at for the Ops Center. The as I was talking about all along, looking at all this in people, process, and tools, right? The working groups that we have stood up right now, the SISE, the Fleet Response Working Group, they're getting stuff done. They're working on those use cases. The process that we have is virtual to parasitic. And what do I mean by parasitic? Chris was nice enough to let Tom and I come and be parasites over this last one. We were in an office downstairs here with the EI. We were connected to them. Why? Because they have information sources. We can provide them with information sources. We're in an environment where we can work collaboratively with the people that need to do it. So that's where we are right now. The tools that we have an SISE App Store, which Tom showed earlier, a lot of different data sets that are in there. We have the GeoCollaborate tool, so you can view a lot of that data and be able to share that data across companies and across entities, private and public, which is great for viewing data. And then we have the tax operation tool underneath that, which I'll show a couple of screenshots on here. I'm not going to do another display of a tool, right? I think you guys had enough of that today. But we have that underneath, which can do the actual operations, decision support, and common operating picture. So in other words, you can be collaborating on GeoCollaborate, information pieces back and forth. But then what do you do about that? Just because I see it and I can see that this dam is a red dot on my map, there's a lot of things that have to come after that, and that's the piece here that we're talking about. So where are we going? Where do we want to go? The 2B, the discussion amongst the board at the consortium, where we'd like to go with SISE and the SISE Ops Center. expanding on the people side, expanding the work groups to open up for new use cases, and when they're done, close. Okay, I was a government guy for a lot of my career, and I can't stand when they stand something up and it goes on forever. Right? Stand something up for a reason, create the outcome, and then have it go away, and then stand up the next one and continue that process. A couple of the sectors in there that we're looking at, food and fuel, next ones that we really want to get use cases in. Also, I didn't put it on here, is medical, is another one that we got coming on as well. So that'll be another entity, another work group that we'll be looking at. And again, bringing these work groups on when there's a use case, when there's things to do, to resolve, to move forward. In the process, we're looking at, we need to do, right now we have Tom, and Tom is it. If Tom gets hit by a bus on his way out of here, oh, and John, sorry, right? I don't know. I think if Tom won the lottery, he may still show up to some of the meetings. More to gloat than to work, but he would show. No, I'm kidding. But if Tom gets hit by a bus on his way out of here today, this ops center that we're looking at, that's the support that's being provided to all of this, takes a huge blow. It's a long-term try to recover from that. So we need to get more people working on this. We need a fixed location for them to be working on it 365, right? Not just when disasters happen or when we can do a meeting or a Friday call. There needs to be people working on these use cases all the time. Tools, we've got a good set of tools, but we're open to other tools as we go forward that might be necessary. Okay, let me stop there just for a second and just ask if there's any questions. What I covered here is where do we want to go with what we've been doing during disasters from SISE. So this is your group, so I'm wide open to take back to the board what you all think about what we're looking at and what we're trying to do. Good or bad? I mean, yeah. That's right.
To perfect stuff on the fly, so to speak. So I'm in full support of it.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah,
I'll definitely take that back. Anything else? Any points to the contrary to that?
I just have one question.
Yes, sir.
When you say 365, is it 365 24/7, or how do you, or what's your vision proposal?
So again, we're developing this, right? I think we would all love to see it 24/7, 365, right? There's a lot of things that go into that. I mean, the biggest one being money, right? So that's a big one, right? And then the need. Is it needed 24/7 all the time? Or is it needed 24/7 when dark skies start happening, right? You go from gray to dark. So those are all things that we definitely are talking about. But 365 for sure, when it comes to coming off the back end of this storm, we did new stuff this time that we didn't do last time. And some of it worked, some of it kind of worked. Some of it was like, I don't know if that really works or not. But when are we going to go back to that and say, okay, this is stuff that worked, let's codify that, right? This stuff that kind of worked, well, let's work on that a little bit more and do an exercise and see if it really still does work, right? So we can take it into the next storm. And then who's pushing out the training books, right? And training is nothing more than it could be an email of this is what we do, or training could be a little bit more on how do you use the GeoCollaborate tool more, right? Those kind of things. So that's what that 365 is. How do you do this and not lose it from this storm to the next one? Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
I think from a state government perspective, there's an opportunity where we will have businesses that are rather large and have an interest beyond just the borders of their immediate community. And when you're talking about kind of expanding the group and looking at the different sectors, but then also having more folks involved, there's an opportunity from the state level to be able to look at a number of our partners and say, we'd like you to work with this group. And what that does for us is the work that they're doing, that's how we're able to engage, because we may not be able to engage with them at that time with those issues, because that's not where our private sector group is going.
Right.
But if they're involved at this level, we're able to leverage a lot of the work that they do and kind of take that energy and build that back down to what we can apply to the state. And I don't know what that looks like, but in kind of the future vision of the structure of this group, we have, 50 plus opportunities to be able to feed a lot of the state private sector partners into this. And I'd like to see how we can make that work.
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. I don't know if you want to comment on that at all, but Molly, I'll say yes, right? And it's not just the state level; it's the federal level too.
Yeah.
I mean, Greg's sitting here. Greg was actually sitting downstairs with Tom and I last Thursday, right? I think it was, in the middle of the storm and everything like that. So we've got a tight relationship, I think, with two of our bigger partners from a public sector perspective, right? The FEMA and BOC and the NIC. But that's not it. We've got a great relationship with North Carolina, with their private sector efforts, with you guys, with your private sector efforts, up in Pennsylvania. We have a relationship with Maryland, right? That's 3. If you count all the territories and all that, there's 51 more, yeah. Right? If you just want to count at the state level and not count us district people into that, then now you're talking about you got 47 more, right? So, yes, at least 50 more. So there's a lot of other opportunity out there for us on the public sector as well. And I don't know, I don't want to go back to the slide, but I wanted to make a very clear point that where is the focus of the SISE Op Center? Private sector. But it's keeping the information lanes open amongst public sector and private sector as well. So we have that whole information side that's really important. And the last thing we want to do is get in between a Duke Energy or Dominion Energy or any of them and their relationships with you in an EOC. That we don't want to do, okay, because that's important. And I know that personally. However, if there's a way we can help Dominion do what they're doing without them having to pull on state resources, because, I mean, guys, let's just be honest. When you ask for high water vehicles to a government, right, I know unless you're going to your guard in Pennsylvania, you're not going to have them, right? Maybe a couple duck boats down in Philly, right? But aside from that, you really don't, right? And you're going to DOD. And I can tell you from experience, just the time to have that conversation with DOD to get resources moving is going to kill you, let alone the expense, okay? So if there's an area in there in that white space in that matrix that we can fill with a connection from a private entity to a private entity, that's what we're trying to get to. So, and saying, by the way, this is something that we worked on in one of these sectors, public sector, so it got done, right? That's what we're really trying to say here. So, okay, unless there are any other hot comments to take back to the board, it sounds like what the group is saying is that's a good direction that we're putting out there, and we need to continue to do that. Okay, I'll take that back to the other members of the board. Kelly McKinnon, by the way, who'll be here tomorrow, is kind of the point person for the board. He's our treasurer on the board. That's the point person to get this Ops Center moving. Where do we get the funding for it? How do we get the people into it? Where's it going to be? He's our point person for that. Kelly, if you don't know him, was the deputy at New York City OEM for many, many years. So he's used to work at the job. So he'll be here tomorrow, so feel free to beat him up on it as much as you want. I wanted to just show a couple screenshots real quick of some of the things that we were working on from an Ops Center perspective, right? You saw tools that do good at viewing data that's out there, right? And a lot of folks will say that, and it is very important, right? The stuff that was shown earlier from the NIC, from their viewer, the stuff from GeoCollaborate from that viewer, the ability to share that information to say, what do the flood gauges look like? I got a place I can go see that, right? If that's what you want to do is see it. And be able to think through, okay, now what do I need to do for that? What we've been able to do for the sites is take a piece of software that's out there and say, and we did use this in the district, to operationalize that now, right? So I get the maps, I get the stuff, and I didn't tell Dave this, but I stole GeoCollaborate and literally just integrated it into here. So you see the colors on the map. I didn't do that. I just linked to his stuff, and it shows up in the map in the tool. That's because he's got open feeds, and he does that so he can collaborate, right? So we collaborated with him and pulled it in. The other thing we collaborated with, and this was, and I'm showing you right now, by the way. If you look in the upper left-hand corner right there, you'll see it says live state 1, and underneath there it says what work group you're in. And within that work group has a data group, okay? And I didn't actually ask Chris if I could do this, so I apologize. But this information that you're looking at right here, at least the circles on the map, are EEI data, okay, that they got, your data, the electric company data that are in here of outages. We're able to keep that from everybody else seeing it because we do that role-based access control, okay? So this is in there, these outage numbers are in there, the actual emission of power and power outages is in there. The only people that can dig into that data, though, right now is EEI or their members that are supplying that data because of our role-based access and the SISE process for vetting people in and out. So you can see on there we have clearly identified all of the outage map of what it looked like. This is about, I don't know, maybe 2 hours ago. But what we're really doing from the Ops Center here is we're looking at missions, okay? And the ones we did for this storm that we knew we had good data on that we could share and see what was going on were transportation, food, fuel, and the power outages, or the power. So those are the missions that we're looking at within there. What does that mean? We have an inbox, basically, like an email inbox, that's feeding information from all sorts of sources. It's feeding information from emails, it's feeding information from the weather service, it's feeding information from, in our case, within the EEI data set, it's feeding information in from the data fusion, it's feeding information in from traffic, all those other things are coming into the inbox. And the inbox, it doesn't matter whether it's text or CSV or whatever, it could be video, any of that, doesn't matter, it comes in. From there, we're able to say, okay, here's something that raises our concern. We get an email that says there's been a change in the evacuation status of Wilmington. That's something we want to do something about. So we create an incident out of that, basically just pull the information into an incident, ask a bunch of questions about it, validate the information, make sure it's the way we want people to see it, and then we post it up there as an incident on the map. Now, if I post that up as yellow and I get 2 or more yellows in, say, transportation, it's going to turn that mission yellow, right? And we set those intensities with the different sectors. So for the power side, what we did is for each utility, if it was 10%, it was up to 10% of the power of the total customers that was out, it stayed green. If it goes above 10%, it went to yellow. I think when we hit 10 to 25% was yellow, 25 to 50 was orange, 50 and above turned it red. If you had more than one utility in red in a state, then it would turn the actual mission to red. So now you're starting to see some analytics in here of what does it mean? Not just I can see outages on a map, but now I know this power company and that power company. So what we care about, and this is up to we who set the parameters for that, now that's going to cause a concern. And what is that concern? And what are we doing about it? That's what this is about right here, this tool is about. Okay, so the missions. Here's an example just of the detailed ones. I think this is about 2 hours ago, maybe. I think it's right. Some of the detail and fidelity on the information. There's still, that might be a little bit older on the state of North Carolina itself. But you can see the total customers served and the total outages. That includes the munis. It's not just the investor-owned utilities, by the way. We did that on purpose so that we could see the total state, so that we could say to EEI, hey, by the way, your utilities are good, you're below 10%, you're in the green, but the state's still red because the munis, and then they can choose to do what they want with that. So a little bit more on the fidelity of the data and how we do that and things we do with it. Through this system, we can do everything from take information in, create incidents out of, task people to do things, and taskers could be emails out to folks. We could do reporting immediately, by the way. So if you look at the top right here, that little box, if you push that, it's going to pull everything in the system right then that you've asked it for, and you can create whatever templates you want. And it's going to create an automatic report. So those, call in all those people, and say, because I used to have to do that in the EOC. I would tell everybody, I want a situation report at 6 o'clock in the morning. Well, at 4 o'clock in the morning, they start asking people, what's going on? Give me your information. So then they hand me a report at 6 o'clock. It's 2 hours old information. I don't know where they are, right? So this, exactly. And so that alleviates it. So as your information is live coming into the system, it's live going into your report. You just push the button and produce it. So, okay, I don't want to get, you guys are probably tooled out by now, so I don't want to go into the actual op tool, just to say that we have an operations tool that leverages the work that's done from the viewers into what does that mean. And by the way, one of the unique things with this is it's based off of assets. So if the power company is an asset, as I said before, multiple assets go out, what does that mean to you, right? And we can go to a very deep level with that. Likewise, AVL data, in the district, we run all our AVL data on here, law enforcement, fire, EMS, as well as our, well, we were doing that. I don't know if they're still doing that, but they definitely have their Department of Public Work data in there for plows and things like that. So AVL data is an easy thing to show through here as well. Yes, ma'am.
What is this software?
It's called TACS, Touch Assisted Command and Control System. It's an old name, but that's what it's called. Yes, sir.
So you said we're all tooled out this afternoon, and I agree with you. And so I'm a little confused. I need some clarity.
Sure.
You may have said this already. Looking at that, it looks a lot like what Dave showed with GeoCollaborate.
Right.
Explain again, please. When would we know which site to go to? When would I go to this versus what Dave? Because that looks very similar. And
so let me.
I just need some clarity.
I'll do it very simply for you, right?
Right.
This software is what we're using to do operations, okay? So in the SISE Operations Center, as we're getting all the emails in from folks saying things are going on, declarations of emergency have been done and all that, if you want to view that, GeoCollaborate's a great place to view that, right? It'll be here as well because we're going to pull that data right in here, right from GeoCollaborate and put it on here. So it'll be in here as well. But then what do you do about things that are happening in those areas, right? So with the GeoCollaborate or with what the Nick showed earlier, they're great at showing you data that's come in, right? And if you're sitting in the Ops Center and you see that, you say, okay, look, these 3 dams right here look like they may be trouble, okay? And I can see the traffic and I can see where it is, so that might be an issue, right? What do you do then? You as an operator then have to do something, right? You have to call somebody, you have to create a report on it, you have to divert somebody to go someplace else, all those things. That's what this does, right? That's where you would do that. Hey, I need to send a text message or an alert out to the trucks via email or whatever, right? You can do that right through here.
No.
Well, more to the point, you're viewing the information on his. You can overlay data on a map to see it, okay? Here, it's taking that, what you're seeing, right, and saying, okay, there's been a modification to the mandatory evacuation order, okay? That may or may not show up on your map, right? But you've got that information in. We need to associate that with the things that are going on, right? From that, you're going to send a tasker to somebody to do something. Hey, go call so-and-so. You can do that in here.
So Vince, just another way to look at it. One of the things that drove the GeoCollaborate product was John Shaner, and everyone agreed with him. I don't want to log in. I don't want a password. I don't want to remember anything. Give me the link. I can send it to your phone, and we can, boom, we can be there. And that's how it started, okay? This was the honeycomb. GeoCollaborate's not the honeycomb. GeoCollaborate is a great tool to get everyone on the same page, right? We had to go a step further using that, and the board spent a lot of time on this. This needs a login and vetting and higher security and maybe even top secret at points. This handles all that, right? This can take and assign tasks. When Detroit called us, hey, we're stuck on I-65 going to Florida, we had to create a ticket to track that. We had to put the guy's name and cell phone in there. Track. Is it done? No, we got 300 of them. See, that's what, it's a workflow behind it, right? The other piece that we haven't talked about yet is what do you do in Blue Sky Day? So every event, we're recording every single event in Florence right now. And this plays it back like a tape recorder. And it lets us know what went wrong, what we knew when, right? It's a difference between a $5 million investment and a $50 million investment, but two different missions. GeoCollaborate does what it does better than anybody we've seen, right? But we had another use case of secure information sharing between certain people vetted, trouble ticket, exercise, all that stuff. This is a different solution. Okay. Yeah.
On the just clarifying point to which something I think I just understood.
Sorry.
Clarifying point to something I think I just heard. So there's obviously different levels of data available in this environment.
Yeah.
From the unclass to FOUO to TS. Help me understand.
Or you're company sensitive, which.
Or company sensitive, which is neither of those.
To me, is high in my world.
Which is neither of those.
In my world, company sensitive sometimes is TS.
I just want to focus on TS, right? So help me understand how we have TS data co-shared in an environment that has below TS information access.
Sure. Yeah. And I want to put this into how I used it in the District of Columbia, for example. Okay. If we ever got into the true government top secret world of this, I was talking about data groups earlier that are within here.
Right.
You have work groups also, right? And that's where we split it out, right? So everybody here working on this is in one work group. There may be 3 or 4 different data groups, right? Which has different sensitivities of data, which can be open and closed whenever you want to. And here's my example.
On different computers?
Say again?
Are they running on different computers?
Yeah, it's all within the same system. So it's role-based access control. So when I give Ileana access to this system, I put her in a data group, okay? That data group is able to see certain things, okay? She may not be in this data group over here that can see all these things, right? Right. I can give you an example. A perfect example is when I was running the EOC or running the District of Columbia, I had the EOC, which is everybody's in there, right? To include public relations people, all that sort of stuff. Basically, whatever's in there isn't even FOUO anymore, right? It's pretty much open source, right? Yeah, actually, in DoD, that's what we do. So I'm getting to that point, okay? So at one work group level, I have open or public data, right? I may have law enforcement data group, right? Well, only law enforcement is seeing that, and they can open up the spigot or close it as they need to. During the 2017 inauguration, we had a bunch of protests down here that turned into riots, all the way up until the point it turned into a riot. Nobody saw where the law enforcement entities were that would deal with that. As soon as it happened, they opened the gate. Now you can see where they are, and as soon as it was over, they turned it back off, right? So the system allows you to be able to do that, right? With Ileana telling me, because she's in charge of that data, here's when I want to open it, and it can only open it when I say so, right? Now, this.
Can I comment?
The Secret Service also uses the same software, okay? So as we're running in the District of Columbia, our effort, they are on a different work group, same system, different work group, doing their stuff. Between the two work groups, we can share in a data group, right? But they're sure as heck not going to show me where all their true protective details are and all that sort of stuff. I would call that TS in the sense of what we're talking about. So they have that closed off inside their system. And they're the ones that can open or close that as they need to. That's how it works.
Yeah. And that became important because we didn't have that level use cases, but we knew in order to get there, we needed to have that capability. Now, true TS has to be on its own server, all that stuff. But the people in that community can come to this community and know they're with other people that are trusted, where they can share that data. We couldn't find anything that would do that. And of course, the district did it every weekend, right? I mean, it was just constant. So this is preparation for where we're going down the road. Because right now we're dealing with electric sector stuff, but there's in the corporate world, you share the wrong information with people, people get fired. This was a big thing to the stock value. You got to really protect that information, right? And it may not be TS, but it is TS in a sense to the companies, right? Especially in your financial sector. So Does that clarify? Vince, you asked the question, what's the difference, right?
Yeah.
And
I don't know if I really fully, and so, by the way, I didn't want to tool you out.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of other capabilities in here that go with this. For example, when that storm track is out here, you can run a what if scenario and actually run the storm with the existing data across the area and say, what is that going to do to my infrastructure, right? So the system has the capability of doing that. We're open source, like I would say very much like what Dave was saying earlier, we're open source as well. We're not an Esri shop, we're not any of those, but we ingest all of it. You know, and we have a full data manager.
Chris, can you mention cost control? Because that's a huge issue. Storm cost control. How did you do it in the district? And then how could they leverage that here? Because that's a big issue.
Yeah, so as you're working an incident that's going on, I'm going to do it real quick. As you're working an incident that's going on, you're filling in some critical info, you can look at your log of things that are going in. By the way, Tom showed earlier, this is, we have a version that's out there on the, so when you're doing things in an environment, in a work environment inside a operations center, there's a mobile environment, you're seeing the same stuff that's going on, you're able to manipulate, much like what Dave showed earlier, where you can collaborate, but you can be adding into as well, right? So you can be adding incidents and alerts and things like that into it. So we've got all that. You can be looking at, so when you make requests, resource requests, right? When you need stuff, and we're talking with Chris a little bit about this from looking at the ramp up side of things, right? I know ramp up does a lot of things like this, but for us, and when I started with all of this in FEMA and then DC, I needed to know, all right, I'm requesting resources, I'm going to put it into here, that comes with the resource type, you know, you guys know this stuff, right? The truck costs this much amount to run per hour, plus the people, plus the food, plus the this, plus the that, right? That equals that team, or it's a commodity, in which case I'm just tracking that by cost of the commodity, right? Traffic cone or something like that. All of that's already in the system, preloaded in the system for most major commodities, right? So you do that, you request your resources. As it goes through, I used this during the 2016 blizzard that we had in DC, tracked all the resources through it to include the resources I brought from outside states through EMAC and all of that. At the end, 10 minutes after we closed the doors on the EOC and the emergency was over and all that, I was within $4 million on a $40 million job. Now that's 10%, you know, government now. We're talking government, right? So we round the government, right? So, but I'm not pissing Greg off with my government. But we were within $4 million on a $40 million job, right? And in the end, we really came out to maybe about 2.7 off on it, right? So you can do the resource tracking through here. Not only that, there's a tool on the back end of this that can look at recovery. So if you say, we're going into an area, this is what it looks like. We know that we've got a sheet from every jurisdiction that says, here's my important stuff, get that up first, right? You can map that within here. And then on the back side of that sheet, basically inside the tool, you can do, all right, that means I'm going to put 6 crews here, 5 crews there. I put them to work. There's the calculus that goes into that, how many pulls per hour, how much whatever, right? And it's going to come up with how long is it going to take you to do that job, right? And if you move somebody over here to this one, then it's going to bring up these things first, and this is how much it's going to take to do it, right? Yeah. So you got your resource cost plus that timing cost and where to go and what to do. There's a lot of power in the back end of the analytics in that to be able to do. I use it in the power sense, but we've used it for other things as well. So snow plowing streets was one we used it for sure. So a lot of different stuff in here. I didn't want to bore you guys with another tool thing. I just wanted to show you that we had an operational tool, which is different. I'm not taking anything away from your tools that you saw earlier. Those are important, right? A lot of people, there are people that think that if I see it, I can make a decision and the day's done. Well, it's not, because somebody has to do the rest of this stuff, right? Somebody has to say, all right, so we're saying this is what we got to do. All right, I need to task the trucks to do something. I need to send a text or an email out to these people to do something. I need to track this other thing that's going on that might relate to it. That's what you're doing here, right?
So prior to this, Vince, it was Shaner and myself and John writing notes on paper, okay, sending emails, more emails from Moran on the popular topic, okay, tracking stuff down. And so finally we just said, okay, so we started looking at, John actually started, we looked at what do we have to automate that? And again, leverage, right? Our mission is to leverage. 50 million has been poured into this in the District of Columbia, in probably the most complex government environment in the state, in the country, right? Federal, multiple state, multiple county, private sector, wastewater, everything. And so we looked at it, Mike in the work group, we looked at a number of these things. Okay, why reinvent the wheel? Not only does it handle Black Sky Day, but the one thing I saw was exercises on real data. And he hadn't even talked about yet. They have an executive dashboard that he produced for the mayor and 2 governors that just have a little phone, red, yellow, green, on trash, water, power, boom. Well, how often do you guys get caught reporting stuff? And you have to re-report it and re-report it. And so this was a way we could create the executive dashboard that he paid millions to develop. It's already in there. Now we can use it. And we can now let our states know the status, or our members know the status. So we saw at GeoCollaborate, that is for thousands and multiples. There's just nothing better. We're not going to have thousands of people in an ops center. We're going to have hundreds, maybe someday, right? And it was just a workflow, so it replaced napkins and to-dos, and right? And it would give us a tool to use real data in our exercises with states, and we coordinate on. That was the big.
The win was the first day. I took all Tom Moran's emails and fed them into the system.
Yeah, it was simple.
Right, that's first day.
Yeah.
Right, why? So then we could see everything that was coming from the different people. Then we were able to filter out. All right, these are ones we don't need. Right.
So this evolved. Right, what you're seeing now, you all are seeing this kind of at phase 3, right, and phase 4 and 5 are kind of. So this was the next evolution of how do we support your members as they're moving with real operational tasks to help states notify. And this met the bill, right? But we're not married to any technology. There may be other applications that come up, but this was the next evolution from the board's perspective. Okay, how do we automate this? Let's find something already in place that deals with state and local, federal. Let's deal with commercial, right? How do we make it run by private sector? We don't want the government running it, okay? It's already had millions invested in it. It does many things that we don't currently have that capability to do, and it evolved. So this is kind of where we are, and we put it into use during 2017, and then I think it eliminated problems that we ran into with delays, right? So.
Since you had another question, and I'm going to try to
just curious, like level of access or authority to view certain data sets. Is that to the person level or to the company level?
Depends on what you want to do. Depends on how you want to do it. This is up to, so.
Yes and yes.
So when you come to the SISE is going to decide how do we parse this up into different data groups, right? So as you work your use cases here, you're going to say, here's data that we're going to be able to do something with, and we're creating products from, right, or doing things with. This actually, if we're doing it for the electric utilities, I'm just going to use that as an example, this is not something we want to go to government because there's regulators on the other end of that. That might be an issue, right? And just so you get my regulators out of my EOC right after the derecho storm because they killed me. Anyway, but you're going to be able to make that decision. So an admin to the system, and since this is a SISE system, that admin is going to be taking keys from the SISE work group, right, of who's going to be able to see what are the data groups you're creating, and then how do we vet people in. And Tom's got a streamlined process for how do you vet people into things.
I'm going to show you.
So then you can pick that up and say, okay, so here's how they get vetted in, here's how we're going to vet them into the data groups from them.
So Vince, we have a data provider, telecom company, Hughes Satellite. 70% of all the SAT dishes run through Gaithersburg, Maryland in the U.S. They monitor transactions on SAT dishes and DSLs for 70% of the hotels, motel, food, and fuel. All that data goes through Hughes in Gaithersburg. They are the corporate data provider. So we have a process for the corporate who's providing, but they want to know, they don't care about the individual. They just say, Tom, you can share this with people you've vetted for disaster management. That was their rule in our agreement. We have other companies that share data. So, no, I want to know exactly the person. I want to know where, get more granular, right? We have the flexibility to do both. When I said yes and yes, what I meant was the data provider can determine open to a group, a company, .com, whatever, okay? Or, no, I want level 2 sites people only from these states or only from this sector. It gave us flexibility we never had before. And I'll show you the vetting process. But this tool lets it all bring it together, which we didn't have. Yeah, Ileana.
be heard?
That's a really good question too, Liliana.
As an add-on, as an add-on question to Vince, at the beginning we talked about the trusted agent and that process, right? But as you start getting into these environments where you really start getting into company sensitive, and you can, if you look very company sensitive, could be where specific assets are, so on and so forth.
Right.
Do any of these platforms have any level of true background other than trusted agent, or is it, so for example, can I say I want, these 4 gentlemen to have full access to everything, and then 2 weeks from now I get fired from my company for inappropriate, for being a bad actor, right? So how do we have, are there checks and balances for that?
You got to remember, I use this in DC, right? So we had to have that in there, right? So multiple 2-factor authentications, one way that we can work with in this. Let me back up for a second, because this is a great question and an issue we're going to have to deal with using this. We have not got to the level of using data inside here, aside from this last storm, of which I created a data group for EEI and EEI only, right? This right here, what you're looking at, nobody else saw this besides Tom, myself, and EEI here. We didn't share it outside of here. It didn't get blasted to anybody. That's it. And that was the parameters that EEI set for us on it. So that's what we go by. The ops center, as it gets up and going, needs the cue from this group here of how and when and what information will be shared. You may work on information that you're doing a use case for that'll never make it into this tool.
Right.
That'll never make it into GeoCollaborate, right? That just may be, you may get that sensitive with it, and you'll say, if you need this, call me, right? So I know who I'm talking to, and I know who I'm sharing this with, and I can trust you not to go further with it. So we're real early in this, right? And the reason why I showed it, I didn't want to get deep into the tool. By the way, if anybody in here wants a full out on brief of the tool, a demonstration of it, give Tom a call and we'll come out to you and we'll do it. We'll be glad to do it. But it's new. What we did is we tested it last year and then again this year with a little bit of expanded, but there's nobody right now for this tool, there's nobody on the receive end, okay, outside of who we've used it with, okay? So we're not blasting things out of here. I gave no URL to anybody from this storm. Nobody got to know it. The only people that saw it were the ones that were working in here with it, because we need to get that process down. Chris?
And we've been focusing a lot on the technology, but Chris will tell you better than I can how important, like what you said, that's a standard operating procedure question. That's a ConOps question. Right. The technology will be deployed to support the procedure that the group determines for continued access, and if someone gets separated, and all those things that have to get walked through.
The software has the capability to do, and I'm not an IT person, so I'm going to get this terminology wrong, but if you leave, when they cancel your data from their IT network stuff, right, it cancels off of here as well, right? If we hook it up that way, that's what happens. Yes, sir.
So from a data backup standpoint, do you have a backup server if you lose everything?
So the way we did this for this instance is software as a service. So this is actually out in the Amazon cloud, in the Amazon East cloud. They have all of the credentials for, so the security of it being transferred back and forth, the backup data centers, all that sort of stuff. It's actually how we employ the software in many places. Veterans Administration is one of our clients. They have their own space on the Amazon cloud that we use for them. We can do it on premises if that's what people wanted, in which case then I would say, tell me where your on-prem is and then where's your DR site for all your stuff, and we'll make sure that we set up a backup server in there as well. But for most of our deployments now, people that are looking at it from a security perspective and a DR perspective, it's in the cloud.
Right. So the use cases drive the tool. Key point. The people trust, use case developed tool. And there are a lot of things that don't happen within the tool, right? but the tool will automate things that are expedited, speed up. The tool will provide API interfaces into other databases at the NIC and so forth, right? So it's just the next iteration, right? But Elian, to your question, that's a use case policy, right? How we define that. And I'm sorry. It's defined in the first. We have a user agreement. The first, and it's not TSCP level $15,000 violation. It's not that. It was 43 pages. We got it dumbed down. Matter of fact, Carlos's attorney wrote the whole thing. Rewrote the whole thing after the original was done. And so it's a confidentiality agreement, but it'll be high. There'll be different versions of that as we go up. The whole point is to create comfort with the data provider and create space for them to choose who they want to collaborate with, okay, in a secure environment, right? In addition to that, we got storms, and we need something with no username, no pass, where we can just all be there. They were two totally separate. And I think what happens is people try to kill every bird with one stone. We can't do it. Our mission is to leverage, not create. Leverage, right? $1 million tool, $50 million tool. Okay, it's good enough for them. If it's good enough for Lockheed and Boeing, it's good enough for us, right? I mean, that was kind of what we thought. So,
I just want to wrap up. The real talk here was not about the tool, right? We just wanted to show you kind of the tool, because if you're going to have a for real operations center working for you, they need to have for real procedures and really doing operations. And not taking anything away from a viewer. A viewer's great to display information and look at it. When you actually got to do stuff, that's not cutting it. You got to do a little bit. There's got to be more to it. So that's why I showed you the tool on the back end that we're looking at using for this. So the real point in this is we want a full-time operations center to support this group, blue sky, gray sky, right? Black sky. So that's what the board wants to do. I'm glad you guys got your guys' support, and we'll continue to work with you on how we do that.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Chris. Okay. All right, let's wrap. Let's here. Just so you all know, we have DHS has invested almost $1 million into the SISE, the work group, the process development. Part of our plan with them is to create a sustainment model, a business model that we can use with private sector subscribers and so forth. We're working with EEI on that. We're going to be talking with several of the companies to kind of frame that. But we want to end with SISE outreach. What is this outreach? What is this about? Sustain this model. Mike and I spent a lot of time, Carlos Torres, Chris Geldart, Chris Eisenbray, and a lot of pieces. What are the best models that are out there? How do we do outreach? Well, first of all, the question is who we make an outreach to. So the first things we are on our objective list is we want every state EM office and their private sector desk rep, if they have one. We want state police. There's 2 or 3 people in state police, and there's 2 or 3 in DOT. So we want to provide outreach to them and alert them and bring them in. We just don't want to say, hey, come check us out. We want to grab them and bring them into the environment and then have them experience the environment. So what is the typical standard? You print brochures, you go to conferences, and you talk from the stage. Okay, I call that the shoe leather approach. It's about 1% accurate, and if you spend $5, you might get 50 cents back. It's not a very cost-effective method, and anybody in business knows about marketing and education. It's an endless kind of thing. We're taking a different approach. So we're using a combination of efforts, and we were testing them. Our approach is very simple. We don't need more people. We need less people, right? We need trusted decision-making or influencing people. So that was the core. This wasn't to get big. This was to get large with the right people, right? The second piece was, our philosophy was use case focus, not broad topics, right? How do we do that? We leverage digital assets, right? We use LinkedIn social media to find people that might have an interest, that have the title, so forth. They still have to be vetted, and we wanted to prove that concept. The other one is through networks, people that know each other already, right? So within the electric sector, it's a great community to do that, but you guys are rare, okay? There's not a lot of mutual aid going on in a lot of sectors. There's a lot of silos. I think the electric sector is really a great model because you have a trust framework kind of already set up, which is great, right? But what we did, we ran some tests I want to show you. And part of that test, it's automated. It runs 24/7, 365. It's very quick. And if you have access to a website, I want you to put this website in and just see what I'm talking about. Ready? You're going to go through level 1 of SISE vetting. So it's www.siseusa.org. SISEusa.org. I'm going to pull it up on the screen for those guys that are on the internet still. God bless you, by the way. Is it? Oh, there's still people on there. Walter Dykes has been on there since day one. All right. SISEusa.org. Okay. We just moved everything to secure servers. Okay. We are testing 2 different versions of this page. So if you hit this again, it'll look a little bit different. We test for headline. We test for graphic. We want to know which has the best reception. If you scroll down, you read a little bit about it. If you're a stranger to us, if you hit learn more, like who's the All Hazards Consortium? Okay. So I'll press learn more, and then if you scroll down, all of this information unfolds, and it tells you about us. Okay. Okay. Now remember, this is for someone who's never heard of us, but is a logistics manager for the fuel sector, right? That's the person we want eventually. And we don't want to spend money going to all the conferences and talking like crazy. So we find them, they come here, and we put in our name. I'll just put in Tom Moore, okay? And I'll 123 whatever .gmail.com. Now, the minute I put that in and hit return, it validates my email. Now, I'm going to get a report that that email was bogus and kicks me out, okay? But I want to walk you through the test. So now the first thing, if you look right across there, you'll see info, sector, details, needs. So what are we doing here? By answering a few questions that you declare about yourself, you can go ahead and fill it in. This allows you to tell us what your name, email, company, whatever, and down below this, it says, what are you interested in? Now, this can be changed at any time, right? Now, to me, this looks like a magazine subscription thing, right? If you ever signed up for those, you get sports and ballet and music, okay? So they can check all of them or just a few of them. And then from here, it goes, are you public or private? And it starts dwelling. It takes about 2 minutes to do this. But at the end of the day, what this gives us, it allows us to categorize you based on your input to the information you're interested in. Okay? And this ranges from, well, I'll let you when you fill through it. So this is level 1. This doesn't validate, if Ileana fills this out, this doesn't validate your identity. It just validates your profile. Why is that important? Because during Harvey, I had 7,500 emails sent to me on spreadsheets and documents. Hey, add these to your fleet movement list. And I'm thinking, are you out of your mind? Okay. I don't even know who these people are. All right. Now it's automated. The emails are validated. If that email comes from an address outside the U.S., it's kicked out. If it's on a bad email address list, it's kicked out. It filters it. And here's another thing, Ileana, you mentioned this before. If you leave and you send out, I'm moving and I'm going to FEMA, this software will change your email address in the database. Amazing. For us to manage contact lists is a major pain in the butt. Very, very nice capability. DHS paid for this, right? We did this through the VIP Challenge program. So when you're done, you'll get an email. Hey, thank you. Here's our annual report. Now you have just been vetted level 1. Level 1. Okay? Now, what do we do with those? There you go. Okay. Okay. Now, think about this for a minute. What you just went through, okay, what you guys just went through, this process, we plan to use on many things. You ever have people come into an exercise and they're brand new, they don't know anything about what you're doing, and they don't read? And you send them a read ahead. And you show up with 50 people in the room, and okay, all right. So this same process we're going to use for exercise. Instead of sending you documents, we're going to have you watch 2, 3, 4-minute videos, and that's your read ahead because you've opted in. You go through a process. What I love about this, it works on a mobile phone. 72% of our people are mobile, right? And it's automated, which means we need less people, and we can validate the information security, right? So this is part of the digital process. I want to come back to that in a minute. When you see the results, it's pretty powerful. So the trick is I don't want any more spreadsheets. I'm sending everybody to SISEUSA.org. If you want somebody and you want to refer somebody, they're all going to go there and they're going to opt in individually. This isn't a company, it's an individual. Very important, right? The SISE works on individual permissions, not organizational permissions. We had a big debate about that. Oh, wait, Tom, I remember Carlos said, Tom, if I got 30 people in my organization, you mean each one of them got to go do it? I said, well, the way the policy's set up now, how are you going to vet a coned.com domain? How are you going to vet FEMA.gov? Who's looking at the data? You don't know. There was a lot of debate, but then we decided to do that, okay? All right. So let me pull this slide here. Okay, so on the screen now, give me just a second. It'll come up here. So here's what it looks like. Once you come out of level 1, you're the people on the right. Now you've been at least vetted. We know that you're pretending to be somebody, and you've told us about what you're interested in. Now you're a level 1 user. That doesn't mean you're in the SISE. You've just been screened for the All Hazards Consortium, right? And whoever, so if our members are saying, Tom, do you have a database of everybody that sells generators? Yeah, we can pull that up. Okay, that's how we can tailor this. Hey, I need everybody that sells. I remember Mike Migas told me about that barge company with like lodging on it, had hotels on it. Okay, all right. We can use this for resource providers, whatever. So once you've been level 1 vetted, now you come in on the left. Now you're going to go into the next level screening, which is going to validate your identity to the profile. Okay, and that's another web address. We'll talk about it later. But that walks you through. Now Ileana's going to say, I want to join the SISE. And now you're going to go through another process automated that's going to, you put in your name and email, it'll connect it to the profile, right? You'll fill out a form. You'll say, I've read the SISE agreement, check, like iTunes Store, right? Check. You'll put in your credit card and $1.99. We had a big debate about that too, by the way. $1.99 is going to be charged against your credit card. Why? It validates you're US, you're not a robot, and you have a valid address. And the email for that corresponds with the financial records. And if you're on bad financial lists, it's going to flag and kick you out. This all happens like this. Amazing. You'll have your cell phone, so we're 2-factor. Then you'll come to a form page, you'll create your account. Okay, here's my email, my password, and boom, then you're in the App Store, right? Next time you do, you don't have to go through the vetting, you come in, but it'll have 2-factor every time you log in. So what have we just done? We've now validated your identity against a profile, and if they don't match, you're out. We've validated you're a U.S. citizen and you're not on but you're not on some financial, scammer list or whatever. And so this, for the use case we have today, this is good. What will come in the future is how many remember the PIV-I pilot we did, right? Okay. There'll be a part of the SISE that requires a PIV-I card to get in. And if you want rock solid security, that's it. Okay. But you're going to have to get fingerprinted and pictured, and you're going to have to go to a PIV-I card issuance and get it. You still got your PIV-I card, Jim. Okay, good. Okay. And that is no screwing around. When you use your PIV-I card, okay, I laugh all the time because remember the big thing in New Jersey with the governor and gate with the exit and what was it called? The leaks from the governor's office and somebody got him in trouble, okay? I remember talking to Keith Ward. I said, Keith, he said, Tom, that would never happen with PIV-I. And I said, why is that? Well, number one, with the PIV-I card, it tracks every keystroke, every email, everything you do, and we'd know exactly what you did when. That's how PIV-I works. That's why it's a gold standard. That's why it costs hundreds of dollars a year for a card, right? But we're not there yet. But I wanted to show you there's 2 vetting processes, level 1, and now we go into level 2, right? So here, we ran this for 5 days. Look what we got. 5 days. We didn't really run an outreach program. We just changed the email address on the daily fleet movement stuff we sent out, 9 versions of it. And in 4 or 5 days, 152 people we've never heard of opted in, went through the filter, 5 academics, 47 government, 10 nonprofit, 90 private sector, okay, and 3 unknown, which will never get anywhere, bogus emails, whatever, okay. Now, the next, I don't have it right now, I'm pulling it now. If I could show you the companies that opted in on there, it was unbelievable. BP, International, it was like serious fuel, electric, all over the country. It was amazing. What did we do? We sent an email. We didn't go to a conference. We didn't have to have a brochure. We didn't have to have you guys promoting anything. We were tapping into awareness already because they're interested, they're following us on a newsletter, right? So we ran a test with LinkedIn ads. We were going after private sector, logistics professionals in, I think, across 6 sectors. And we spent about $350 in ads, and that produced 11,000 opt-ins. And of the people that opted in, we pushed, I think it was about 250 people said, I want to be on your newsletter. Now, what does it cost us to go to a conference, fly out, get a hotel, motel, do a pitch, you know, hey, join the SISE, join it. How many people, you know, at 4 in the afternoon, we're the last session, everybody's asleep, and we'll see you in the bar, and it's a complete waste of time and not very productive. And you know what? We get the wrong people, because when I do that, and I've done it a lot, I don't get the people I need. I get people that are not operators, and they are professional meeting goers, and I got more data and more emails to do nothing with. It's just crazy, okay? So this is this is targeted. Now, how else can we use this? Any of you guys got customers? Okay, you got customers? All right, this same technology, okay, can take messaging platform to another level, right? When you put this technology to work to go after specific people with a specific message. We did an opioid. Remember this? We did a test. Because, okay, it works for emergency management. How's it going to work? So we did opioid in Maryland, big crisis, right? So we created a Facebook ad, 3 versions of it, and we ran it. We spent $300 and some, and we ran it for all of Maryland and all the counties that surround Maryland and Delaware, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, like that. We ran it for 5 days. Okay? We reached 11,800 people with the one ad. They click on an ad and they watched a really compelling video, you know, those chalk talk videos where they draw things about pain and, okay. And of that, we reached, I think about 400 people that clicked on a link and went right to a map of the state of Maryland, and they click on the county and went right to the health sector webpage, the page, not the home page. And we found the health sector has spent millions of dollars building opioid pages, but they're so buried in that government site, you can't get to it, right? So this is very targeted, and it's very focused, and it's very cost effective to get a message out quickly. And if you have customers or things you're doing, this is the way to go. So I wanted to show you about the outreach. So our plan is we've developed a business model. We're gonna create a kind of an online version of that for general consumption. For SISE, it'll be different. It'll be more nomination. But at the end of the day, we want SISE to become a vetted environment for operations professional in electric, food, fuel, telecom, water, lodging, right? It's lifeline sectors, and that's how we're going to go. But we just don't want to waste a lot of time doing shoe leather stuff. So we just figure this can be better. Okay, let's summarize because we're at the end of our day. We covered a lot of ground. I'm going to type up the decisions we've rendered for today. Tomorrow, we have our SISE Strategic Advisory Committee meeting in the morning. They decided to open that. Usually that's a closed meeting. It's open. We'll have representatives from FEMA, Logistics, FEMA National Business Emergency Operations Center. DOE's been invited. I think Walter's coming. Walter Dykes, I believe, or Jeff Baumgartner, Chris, I'm not sure which. Alex Keenan from Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration is dialing in, but he'll be here. And Kelly McKinney will come down. So the agenda for tomorrow is we'll start at 8. Register at 8. We'll start. Battery running out. Okay. We'll go through our SISE long-term business plan, budget, kind of what we're looking for. The federal government wants to know that. Steve White has drafted the documents, and we have a meeting with DHS coming up. We want to talk about what that model looks like, and then we're going to get into probably the session tomorrow that is going to be the most interest is a new state public-private model that Pennsylvania is developing, working with the private sector in the same way the Fleet Working Group has worked with multiple states. We're looking to create a similar model in the Commonwealth. I'm going to talk about that, a couple other topics here. So just a couple announcements here. The name tag you're wearing, okay? Save it, okay? Don't throw it away, huh? And your 10 card, what? Just leave it here or leave the 10 cards, okay. Let's see the agenda. I think it's 8 o'clock. Yeah, we start early. And then we're going to end early too. We're end at 3. So for today, okay, for today, we wanted some of our new folks to get, you know, it's a lot of stuff to take in, right? I was talking to Heather, and she said, "How do you explain the site?" You can't explain the sites. Nobody believes you. You just got to get kind of experience this group, and you get a feel for it, right? But I hope you walk away with one thing: is we collectively, whether we're retired or actively employed, we're a group of problem-solving innovation folks, right? So it's how do we do it quicker, better, faster. Anyway, so Mike, I'm going to give you a last word as chair of the Fleet Work Group. So the sites work group, for those who know, is underneath the Fleet Work Group, right? It has a chair and a co-chair, but I'll give you a last word.
Like Tom said, it's very hard to get a grasp on this unless you come to a meeting like this. I hope you're all taking notes to bring back to your organizations to let them know what you're up to. Again, this is about people working together. It's a protected environment, right? You want to make sure that you're getting the job done, but you're getting it done with the right people involved and getting it done right, you know, the first time. It's about the people, both the federal government, state government, county government, private sector. We all serve the same people live in these communities. So why not work together? You got these two great machines, right? You got the public sector and the private sector. If they don't work together, it's a battle for the ages, right? But if they're on the same side, and you've got them both on the same side of the rope, then there really is no opponent that could defeat them in let's say a tug of war. So that's where this group is trying to get to, the sharing of information that allows us to be able to serve the same group of people better, but in our own, lanes, so to speak. But we need one another. So, I hope you are exhausted, because that was the goal, to work hard and get this thing off the ground. Tomorrow, we'll put it into practice, and we'll see if the new people are really serious about joining this fantastic club. That's it.
Yeah. Very good. All right. That concludes. We don't have formal dinner plans. You're on your own, but we're back here at 8 o'clock. All right? All right, great. Okay, David.